Alright, so listen, we're going down and down to the depth, deeper the king of the keys of the east and the west. Castle crowns, backs, east, gifts, fruit, still on our chest. Oh my God, thanking Yahweh for another study session for scholars from the rock and the deep. What a blessing.
Well, that's how you open up the Sabbath. We give Yahweh praise for allowing us to be here once again with you fine, beautiful people. As you can see, the deep scholars are here. Sarah is here to my right, which is your left, and Professor Joseph Coleman, he is here to my left, which is your right. And here I am. So you can see we have nice, fresh titles at the bottom. We have Say Who's the Psalmist. We have Joseph, who's the dreamer, and you have me, who is your humble servant for this evening's festivities. This is a Sabbath day. You know, the Bible says in Genesis chapter 1 that the evening and the morning were the first day, second day, so on and so forth during the creation week. So behold to that same standard that Yahweh sets. We know that mankind says that the day begins at 12 a.m. But according to Yahweh, the day begins the evening before the morning. Amen. So here we are at sunset, embracing the Sabbath day and embracing all of those blessings. So one of the things that Yahweh says is you should blow the shofar during all of your feast days, during all of your sacrifices and offerings, and whenever you feel happy. So we here in the deep, we're very happy. We're happy that you're here. We're happy that you've invited us into your home. This evening's session, our title and our topic is the Maharanian candidate. The Maharanian candidate. And I know a lot of people are trying to figure out, you know, who is the Maharanian candidate? What does that mean? Well, if you've had that question, you've come to the right place, because this is all about election 2024. And we're going to be detailing it now in March. So you can see Professor Joseph, he's ready. He has on his blue suit with his US of A flag. He's representing America, the red, white, and the blue. Yes. And he even has on his American socks, if you can believe it. So he's got the tie and he's got the socks to match. Sarah is wearing green. She says she's representing the Maharanian. Yeah. And as we get deeper into this subject, and pearls, so she is ready to go, looking fabulous as ever. Me, I'm in the middle. I'm representing part, I guess, Democrat, part Republican, because, you know, right now it's 50-50 from the world standpoint. They don't know who's going to win. But when you're in Yahweh, he shows you these things well in advance. So we're going to give you all of the clues that Yahweh has shown us based on the timeline, the same timeline that we've used for the past 20 years. So I know a lot of people are new to the platform. So they may be wondering, you know, who is this deep ecclesia? Where did these guys come from? Where do they get these teachings? What is their history? What is their background? What do they really believe in? Well, if you have that question, we're here to answer that question. So about 19 years ago, 2005, Sarah and I, we weren't even married yet. We were dating, but we started this journey of going through the Bible from Genesis to Revelation and uncovering the deep truth about what the word of Yahweh says. And that led us into some deep mysteries in Revelation that we started teaching. And so that's 19 years ago, 2005. So we've been teaching Revelation for 19 years. And what we did was, this was before social media platforms, this was before YouTube. We started to compile all of this research about the end times, about the last days, the final hours. What does all of this mean? And it wasn't being really taught in the circles that we were in. So we had to do a lot of deep diving. And that was even before Google was the big giant that it is now. So picture this: you're trying to scrap for information. You're reading all the articles and books that you can to come with a decisive understanding of what is the truth about Revelation. And so we had to spread every major doctrine, from the Baptist, the Catholic, the Buddhist, everything. We looked at all of the doctrines that talk about heaven, about hell, about the end times, and we compared it to what the Bible was saying. Yes. And that allowed us to filter out all of the misinformation and streamline this truth process. And so what we've done is, in 2005, we actually started email campaigns where we would do studies, and it would be about 3 to 4 weeks. And we would send out a study on Revelation and what the Bible was saying and how the different books and chapters of the Bible connect. And we started with a small group, and that grew into a booklet of about 8 teachings. And then in 2017, we took a lot of that information and we put that into our website that we call the deepcall.org. Yes. And so all of the teachings that we've gone through over the past 19 years have been neatly compiled in that website. And you can go through, if you go through the entire catalog, you'll go from Genesis to Revelation 7 times.
Yes.
You pass through the Bible 7 times. And at the end of that, you're a scholar. I promise you. There's no way that you can go through that information and accept it and not come out changed.
That's right.
So it's some great information for you. Everything that we talked about in 2005, because we issued a lot of prophecies way back in 2005. One of the things that happened was John Paul II had recently died. And we knew that the Pope who was coming in was supposed to utilize a new name.
Yes.
And Benedict XVI came in, which is a name that's been used 16 times. So based on that information, we already knew that Benedict had to either do 2 things. Either he had to be removed from office or he had to quit, which if you know the Catholic doctrine and the Catholic history has never been done.
Right.
When the Pope comes in, the Pope is in for life.
Till death.
Till death.
Right. Yep.
And so we issued that prophecy way back in 2005. And it wasn't until I think 2013 that Benedict stepped down.
He resigned.
And then a new Pope came in with a new name. So if you want to understand what all of that means and how that connects to Revelation, then you'd have to go through those teachings. But that's just one of the prophecies that was issued in that documentation. So we've been doing this and talking about times and seasons and dates, because I know that when we relaunched season 4, we relaunched the Deep Dive Live with season 4. One of the things we did say was that the mark of the beast was coming between 2025 and 2032. And we said it with such confidence.
That's right.
And a lot of people questioned it, like, how do you guys know this for sure? Like, nobody's supposed to know about the mark of the beast. It's supposed to catch us by surprise. That's how most people view it. Most people think that the church will be raptured before the mark is issued. I have news for you, that there's no scripture in the Bible that actually says that.
No.
And when you do your research, you'll find out that this was just introduced as a theological discussion 400 years ago.
As a distraction.
Yes. All right. So for picture this, for 4,000 years, everybody knew that the believers would be here in what we call Sodom and Egypt at the end, and they would have to be in a protective state called Goshen whilst the world goes through turmoil, just like Egypt did. So it's a repeat.
Yes.
The Bible repeats. It's on a loop. And if you understand the loop and the pattern, you can jump out of the cycle. So that's one of the things that we have focused on. So when we did our election episode in 2020, we talked about the 6 states flipping. And this was the week before the election. And then the following Friday, we sat down and we detailed, Biden had not even become president yet, but we already saw 5 of the 6 states that we talked about flipping.
That's right.
So prophetic accuracy has been a part of this whole thing for the Deep Dive Live.
Yeah.
But for our ministry, it has been there for 19 years.
Yes.
Now, there are some things that we prophesied in 2020 that we weren't on the air to actually capitalize upon. And one of them is very important because we're talking about plagues and we're telling people, okay, there's this plague begins and then this plague ends. We were in Joe's basement in 2018 when Yahweh told us when we were in a prayer session, we were planning to plan a trip to go to Israel at the end of 2019. And he said, don't leave the country because in 2020, everything's going to be locked down and you won't be able to get back in. Right. So we didn't understand what that meant. But if Yahweh tells us when something begins, don't you think he should tell us when it ends?
Amen. Yes.
And if he tells us when it ends, don't you think that we would tell you when it ends?
That's right.
We did.
All right, we did, right?
Yes.
All right, so let's take a look at this. What we're going to do is, before we jump into this, we're going to go into a worship session.
Amen.
Because, we're going to get into some heavy content. We're talking about the ancient gods in these different parts of the world, but we're also talking about the political powers that are controlling things. And I don't want to get ahead of Yahweh. So I want to make sure that we've already welcomed the Facets. Let's go into a time of worship. And I'm so pleased of the material that we have today for worship. I am so pleased by it, and I'm sure you'll be blessed by it as well. And we'll talk about it after the break.
A chosen people roar, your priests belonging to the one who called us, holy nation born of spirit and blood, God's own possession. And we are more than conquerors.
Yes, yes,
Yahweh.
yes.
Praise Yahweh.
Brand new music from the psalmist Say.
Yes, amen.
That was a
Praise
song
Yahweh.
that Yahweh gave her, I don't know how many years ago.
Yeah, that was like about 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yes.
And what's happened is, as this awakening, this great messianic awakening is taking place, where people are replacing the names that we've been given, those false names like Jesus and Lord and Holy Ghost, and we're moving into the Hebrew names because those Hebrew names mean something. As we're moving into that and shifting into that, there is a void where you can't find great material that actually call on these names.
Amen.
And so if the deep can't find it, then the deep must make it.
Make it, yes. Amen.
So we're launching
Yes.
into every area, every initiative.
Amen.
Yahweh said to occupy. That's what Yeshua told them, right? He said,
Yes.
occupy until I come.
Until I come.
Well, we're going to occupy and we're going to take hold and possession of every area that Yahweh has gifted us and skilled us in.
Amen.
And so
Amen.
I am proud of you. Psalmist say that was a
Yahweh.
beautiful number.
Yes.
Glory, yes.
Fantastic.
All the glory.
Looking forward to more original
more.
content
Yes.
from the deep, in the deep,
Yes.
by the deep,
Yes.
through the blessing and the power of Yahweh Chakma, who gives us
Spirit,
wisdom,
yes.
Yahweh Zimreth, who is our God, who gives us songs.
Yes.
So thank you. We really blessed by you. Now, back to what I was saying, because, worship is very important, and I had to make sure that we got that.
Yes.
So back to what I was saying now, we issue a lot of dates and times, and we're like, this is going to happen and that's going to happen. And a lot of people are like, how can you guys be so confident with all of this information? The Bible, it would be great if Revelation said, on June 2nd, 2028, that's when you can expect the man of lawlessness to be in political power,
wouldn't
right?
do that.
He doesn't do that.
He wants us to study.
He wants us to study
Yes.
to show ourselves approved.
Amen.
And so we thank Yahweh for that. But as I was saying, we've issued a lot from 2020 and 2021 that we have not been able to go back over and really flesh it out and really give content and context to what we have said. But take a look at this from 2020 and let us know what you think. Are you gonna play?
It will.
The video does not want to play for me. Why won't you play for me?
All right, these are facts now. You can take it. We're laughing, but this is serious. We're laughing, but this is serious. And I'm telling you. Yeah, so I'm telling you. Now, when this coronavirus ends, February 2023. That's when they're going to defeat coronavirus. You'll be dealing with that for the next 2 years.
Sure.
Okay? They're like, boy, you're so confident. How you can just throw them numbers like that? And, well, time will tell.
And folks, in the midst of the COVID crisis, when schools were closed and we were shutting down everything, let's recognize how far we came in the fight against the pandemic itself. While the virus is not gone, thanks to the resilience of the American people and the ingenuity of medicine, we've broken the COVID grip on us. COVID deaths are down by 90%. We've saved millions of lives and opened up our country. We opened our country back up. And soon we'll end the public health emergency.
More than 3 years after being put into place, the COVID public health emergency at the federal level will come to an end on May 11th.
The White House made the announcement today with COVID rates declining and treatment options more available coast to coast. CBS 8's Richard Allen looks at what ending this emergency could mean for many families and why the White House made this action today.
Well, that's right. The White House says it's giving more than 3 months' notice before ending this public health emergency so that hospitals and health providers have time to prepare for a number of changes.
Now, the question is, when was that Biden made his State of the Union address? Okay. It's lying. So the question is, when was that Biden made his State of the Union address? That was February 7th of 2023. So way back in August of 2020, Yahweh already told us that in February 2023, they will stand up and they will make these announcements that, hey, the coronavirus is still here, but we've already defeated it. If you listen to his State of the Union speech last week, he said that the coronavirus has been crushed. So I saw an article pop up about 2 months ago, and the question in the article was, why are we now treating the coronavirus like the common day flu? And the reason is because mentally and economically, the world has already moved on past COVID.
It's been crushed.
Yeah, they've already crushed it. And that's what he said. He said that in February of 2023, and 3 days later, that was February 7th, 3 days later, February 10th, 2023, he made the declaration that they're now going to pull the resources from the government for any kind of supplemental aid that you would need in America. And so Yahweh has strategically given us dates and times. Now, February 10th, if you want to know the importance of February 10th, that's actually in the deep studies. That's something that we started teaching back in 2005. So there are many things that happen on February 10th. February 10th, 476, February 10th, 1798. You can go look at those dates and see what they mean. So for him to make that proclamation on February 10th of 2023, that means that he's following what we call the Daniel timeline.
Yes.
So the Daniel timeline isn't something that we're going to discuss in this episode, but just know that that's the foundation for all of the information that we reveal when it comes to dates and times.
Yes.
It comes from Daniel, Ezekiel, Isaiah, John,
Yes.
Jeremiah. So these guys, they have given us, and Malachi as well. Yeshua came, and Yeshua continued to expand upon the teachings from Daniel and from Isaiah. So we here in the deep,
Yes.
that's where we issue our prophetic words from. Because everybody's prophesying now. And Joel said it. Joel said, in the last days, I'm going to pour out my spirit on all flesh. And everybody's going to prophesy. The old men, the young men, the old women, the young women, the dogs, the cats, the snakes, the robbers.
Yes.
Everybody, all flesh. He said all flesh.
All flesh.
Everybody's going to prophesy.
Bad and ugly.
Yeah,
All flesh.
you're all about to see some donkeys talking again, because the doctrine of Balaam has resurfaced.
Amen.
All right, so I just wanted to give you that, because that's evidence, and that's just one of the many things that we have prophesied. It's too many things to go. The average time for the episodes that we did back in 2020 was about 4 hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
The teaching was 4 hours.
Oppenheimer.
So Oppenheimer, yeah, you could watch Oppenheimer twice in that time. So our average teaching was about 4.5 hours. So we put so much information in. I think you always said give the people about 2 or 3 years to really digest it before you move on and start teaching other content. So we've been on this 2020 to 2032 timeline since 2020. Our political episode, we laid out the foundation for the 2020 to 2032 timeline. And that's what this election in 2024 is all about. This is 1/3 of the way. It's the 12-year span. This is 1/3 of the way. So 2020 to 2024 is the first third. And then 24 to 28, that's your middle third. And then, because everything happens in threes, right? So we gave the introduction and foundation for the entire timeline. Now, in this season, we're going to be discussing the second leg and along with the third leg. So we're going to give you all of that content. And so today, we're talking about the Maharanian candidate. So my job is to track the Maharanian candidate. And in order to do that, you have to utilize the Bible. So most Bibles, your Bible probably has it as well, Joe. Most Bibles give you the 66 books,
right.
and then they give you the maps at the back.
Yes.
And they want to provide you those maps because they want you to be aware of certain kingdoms and certain empires from the Old Testament and how they migrated through to the New Testament, and what they mean for us right now in our modern day timeline.
Right.
Because the political powers that are in power in these countries today, they are being empowered by the political entities that are controlling those atmospheres, and those entities, we call them principalities.
Yes.
And again, it comes from Daniel. Okay, so we're going to jump right into tracking the Maharani. All right, so here we go. Bear with me while I get my content up. So, all right, so here we go. This is our first slide. So we're going to be looking at the map of ancient Mesopotamia. So a lot of people, they're trying to figure out, why is Israel so important biblically? Why do the Israelites want that land so badly? And why would Yahweh move Abraham from Assyria or the Amorite territory up in the northeast to go down to the northwest, down to Egypt, and then migrate him to the Jordan, which is Jerusalem? Why is Yahweh doing all of this activity? Well, you have to understand the Fertile Crescent. Over in the Middle East, there's a Fertile Crescent that is based on these rivers. So you have the Nile River, you have the Jordan River, and you have the Euphrates River. Now, the Euphrates River is very important biblically because the Euphrates River was first mentioned in Genesis. Yahweh talked about the 4 rivers in Genesis. The Euphrates has been one of them, and the Euphrates River is mentioned in Revelation. So there is a consistency with Yahweh when he talks about these rivers and what they mean. But from a Fertile Crescent point of view, everyone wanted to be in the land of the Fertile Crescent because that's where you got water in the desert. If you did not live around these rivers, then it will be very difficult for your people to get resources. So that's why Israel is so important, because it's a part of the Fertile Crescent, and on top of that, it's waterfront property. It's on the Mediterranean Sea. Yeah. So Yahweh was giving them the best of the land, and that's what he said. And so when you talk about the 3 rivers, you're also talking about these 3 heads of state. And the 3 heads of state in Mesopotamia would have been Shamshi-Adad, who was in Assyria, Hammurabi, who was in Babylon, and Abraham, who was at this time, he was a wanderer. So he did not have a permanent home. He just wandered around. But Yahweh told him also in Genesis that I'm going to give you this promised land. He said, but you're not going to be around to see it, but your descendants will inherit the promised land. And he actually passed through the promised land. So he saw everything. Yes. And he and Lot actually got a chance to decide, who would live there as a temporary dwelling place. And he said, I can't give it to you fully yet because the Amorites, their iniquity. But so these 3 were the heads of state politically back in the 1800s BC. And they founded these great nations. So Assyria was founded as a city-state, was founded by Shamshi-Adad I. And Hammurabi, he laid down the codes. And Joe's going to be talking about Hammurabi, so I won't step on his toes. And then you had Abraham, who was given the law. You can't mention Abraham without talking about Sarah. That's an injustice, right?
Yes.
I mean, Sarah, you wouldn't go for that, right? We can't talk about Abraham without talking about Sarah.
Exactly.
Right. So when Yahweh gave them the covenant, he said, both of you are going to be tied to this covenant, and your seed is going to be the one who's going to bring forth this relationship. So you fast forward, and in the same land, this is still the same Fertile Crescent, you have this development in Egypt where Joseph and Potiphar now, they get together and they are sharing in this covenant, but they're also maximizing Yahweh's resources to help the Egyptians.
Yeah.
Fast forward, and now you have Moses and Zipporah. So this is all about relationships and husbands and wives coming together through the honor and the glory of Yahweh to commit themselves to this work to preserve these people to get this land that Yahweh has promised. And so Moses and Zipporah now, they join together and they have their sons, but Moses is called back from the backside of the desert into Egypt so that he can free the Israelites so that they can migrate to this promised land, which is the best land in the Fertile Crescent.
Yes.
Fast forward to 1000 BC, and now you have David, Solomon, and Bathsheba in the promised land, and David is supposed to pass on his authority and his power as king to Solomon. And Solomon, as we know, he takes on the kingship, but then he also distorts Yahweh's truth. But he begins to intermarry, and he begins to spread this covenant that was supposed to be solely for Yahweh, spread this blessing into these other nations and create false lines that are tied to the promised land. And that creates a whole mess, because now Yahweh has to bring somebody, and he splits the kingdom in two. He splits the kingdom in the north and the south. And so Jeroboam now becomes king in the north, and he turns wicked. And then you have Solomon, who is king in the south, and his son Rehoboam turns wicked as well. So there's a lot of mess that's happening in the promised land about 1000 BC. Fast forward again to the 800s, and now you have Jezebel, who is the wife of Ahab, and Ahab is the son of Omri, and they have a daughter named Athaliah, and she has a son named Ahaziah. And Joe's over here shaking his head. Why is Joe shaking his head? Because we're getting into the real king's wives of Samaria.
That's right.
The real king's wives of Samaria. So let me break this down for you. What happened in Samaria and at around 850 BC? First of all, Omri is the king, but he's not supposed to be king. He's the leader of the army. He doesn't like the king. Right. So he takes his army and he actually encompasses, he closes them in. He encompasses the city. He encompasses the king's palace, and he said, you cannot leave this palace. And so the Bible simply says, and the king died, meaning he committed suicide because there was nowhere else for him to go. And it says, and Omri became king. There was no vote. There was no consensus for the people to come together and say, okay, we want to see who's going to be next in line. No, it just says, and Omri became king. So this guy was not even in the kingship line. He became king, and then he took the entire populace and he moved through his, I guess his own inspiration, moved the city center to Samaria. And his son, Ahab, was the one who actually began to build the city. And this was an injustice because Yahweh told them, you should not move these things and move the ancient boundary stones. In ancient world, they're called steels. And we're going to talk about steels in a minute. So now Omri becomes king. His son needs a wife. And so Omri says, I'm going to join forces with the Sidonians, who are pagan people. They worship Baal, they worship Asherah. And he says, we're going to create a political alliance between the northern Israel and the Sidonians. And these people are deep in witchcraft. And so the king of Sidon says, okay, no problem, Omri. I've got the perfect wife for your son.
That's right.
My daughter, she's a high priestess to Asherah. And so Omri says that's perfect because we do witchcraft anyway in northern Israel. There's no shame in the game. So they now unite those houses. Jezebel comes in, and then Ahab and Jezebel, they form all kind of dirty alliances.
Unholy.
Yeah, unholy alliances. And so I call them the real king's wives of Samaria.
Yes.
And that's not the worst of what they did.
No.
So around this same time of the real king's wives of Samaria, you also have the real king's wives of Mesopotamia. And let me explain to you what that means. So the real king's wives of Mesopotamia is Samuramat, Shamshadad V, and Adad Nerari III. So what's going on in Israel and what's going on in Assyria at the same time? In Israel, you have Ahab and Jezebel. They concoct this scheme where they're going to overthrow the kingdom of Assyria. Well, actually, the kingdom of Assyria was coming against them, and they actually won the battle. And so now they said it was Ahab and it was Aram. They came together. They linked arms, linked forces. The armies came together. They defeated the king of Assyria because he was trying to take northern Israel. And so Ahab now is a turncoat. He says, well, Aram helped me, but guess what? Aram has my favorite city in Israel, which is Gilead. So here's what I'm going to do. Jehoshaphat, who is from the south of Jerusalem, he's coming to visit me in the north. I'm going to convince Jehoshaphat to join with me, and then we're going to stab Aram in the back and try and take Gilead back. And we know how that ends in 1 Kings 22. In 1 Kings 22, that is when Ahab died. Jezebel now tries to retain power in the north. And Jehu was appointed by Elisha, and Jehu's a crazy guy. I mean, this guy is strange. He was the worst driver in Israel. They said, when they saw the person driving the chariot, they said, that person is driving like a madman. You don't drive like a madman, right, Joe? Okay, you drive good. I drive law-abiding citizen. Yeah, I have some friends who drive terribly. Yeah, Sarah's brother is one of them. So they said, Jehu is coming. He's a madman. We're gonna see what he's about, because Jezebel is queen now, and we heard that this guy got appointed. So Jehu came in and he said, I come in peace. And when he got to the tower, he looked up and he said, is there anyone in there who serves Yahweh? And the servants looked out of the window and he said, if you serve Yahweh, throw Jezebel out of the window. And they did. The servants did. And then he became king. And then he went to the temple of Baal in Israel, in the north of Israel. And he said, I want to hold a huge feast for Baal. And he invited all the priests to come. And he said, you guys worship Baal on a low level. Let me show you how to magnify Baal on the big screen. And so he got everybody together, and then he locked them in the church, and then he burned it down. So this happened. What is happening in Assyria during the same time with Samuramat? Well, Adad Nirari III is her son. She's married to Shamshi-Adad V. Shamshi-Adad V is the representation of Shamshi-Adad I, the guy who he founded the city of Assyria and made it a kingdom. It was a low state before, and then he made it an actual kingdom, an empire. So Shamshi-Adad V, he's the fifth generation of, he's not the son or the descendant, but they take on names whenever they become king. So he's taken on the spirit and the embodiment of Shamshi-Adad, and he becomes king. And a legend has it that Samuramat said to him, let me rule for 5 days. And he said, what? And she said, yeah, let me rule for 5 days. Why would she have such confidence for rule for 5 days? Well, early in their marriage, when he became king and she became queen, 8 kings rebelled against them. And so she is the first woman in Assyrian history to set up her own stele. What is a stele? A stele is like a testimony to the people. It's like a giant billboard made out of stone. They call it ancient boundary stones in Proverbs. So she set up this stele, and the stele said, this is to remind everybody that these 8 kings forced me and my husband to cross over the Euphrates, meaning we were in our best state possible, and these guys rebelled, and we had to move from our area, which is, let me show you the map, Assyria is on the left of the Euphrates. She said we had to cross over to the east of the Euphrates to come and deal with these mad people. So she said, let it be known that if anybody were to cross us again, that our god Asher, that our god Baal, and all the other gods that we serve will strike them down in fury and in anger. So that's what a boundary stone is. And you have to be very careful with these stones. You know, in witchcraft, these people, they set you up, they come to your house and they leave these stones in your yard, or they leave these stones in your room under your sink, and you're trying to figure out what's going on in your home. You need the wisdom of Yahweh to make sure that nobody's setting these stones up in your place, in your fortified place, to entrap you. So anyway, she said, well, remember, I crossed the Euphrates with you, so let me rule for 5 days. And he said, okay, sure. And then legend has it that on the 3rd day, she killed her husband, Shamshi-Adad V, and then she became queen. And she is the only queen in Assyrian history to remain in power after her husband died. And she was in power for 5 years until Adad Nirari III came to power. But politically, she was pulling the strings. So in Israel now, after Jezebel died, her daughter's husband died as well, Athaliah. And so Athaliah, she decides that she is going to do the same thing that Samu Ramat was doing over in Assyria. She said, I'm going to kill all of the males in Israel who are challenging me for the throne, including her own son.
Yes.
Her own son. So she wiped out the entire lineage, but the young guy, Ahaziah, he survived.
Yes.
He survived because the priest hit him.
Yeah.
And what's so sad about this episode is when he grew up, he actually turned on the same priesthood that protected him in Jerusalem, because she was looking for him and she wanted him dead. And they hid him until he became of age, just like Adonai III. And then he became the king. And as long as his priestly father was alive, the Bible says that he did right in the sight of Yahweh. And when he died, he turned on the priesthood. And his brother, who would have been the priest's son, his brother spiritually was the one who checked him. He said, listen, the foolishness that you're doing, our dad did not teach you how to do this. And I believe his name was Zechariah. And so Ahaziah, as a young man, had this priest, his brother, murdered between the temple porch and the altar. And this is what Yeshua was talking about in Matthew 23, when he said that all the righteous blood will come on this generation who's crucifying me, from the righteous blood of Abel, whom Cain slew, to the righteous blood of Zechariah, son of Barachiah, whom you murdered between the temple porch and the altar. That actually happened during the reign of Athaliah and then her son Ahaziah. So the Bible wipes Ahab's lineage out completely, even when you talk about Athaliah. So when you read her history, because Jeremiah was the one who scribed all of these details, they call it the Annals of the Kings. When you read Athaliah's history, they don't even mention that she was the daughter of Ahab. They said Athaliah was the grandson of Omri. So that tells you the spirit that she came in.
Wicked.
She came in that same dark spirit. So murder and suicide, they go hand in hand. And we talked about the next pandemic that's coming. Like I said, we issued the decree and we told you when the first one would end. So rightfully, we should also tell you when the next one begins, right? And we will, but not today. We're not going to talk about that today.
Right.
So that's the Real Housewives of Mesopotamia.
Yes.
All right. That was messy.
Yeah.
Moving on from that, now you have these kings who come under Samu Ramat's lineage and leadership. Who am I talking about? The kings Rezin, Tabaal's son, and Sennacherib. So we talked about that. Sarah and I talked about that in the video. So if you want more information on that, just rewatch that video, because that's where we are right now. We're talking about Assyria and Samu Ramat. So Rezin, Sennacherib, Tabaal's son, all of these guys play a role in the final 200 years of the kingdom of Assyria. And moving on from there, the last king of Assyria, who is Ashurbanipal, he was actually X'd out by a triumvirate. Who it was Nebuchadnezzar, who was the king of Babylon, and Media, the king of Media, and the king of Persia. So those three came together to X out Ashurbanipal, who was the last king of Assyria. Now, in Assyria, they already knew that they were wiped out. And so all of the kingdoms in Mesopotamia, they heard about Nebuchadnezzar, and they go to Zedekiah, who is the king in Jerusalem. Because northern Israel is already taken by this point. It was taken by Assyria, and then Assyria was toppled by Babylon. So they know that the writing is on the wall. So picture this. In Numbers 24, all of those kings who came together with Balak to keep the Israelites out of the promised land, now all of those kings are coming to Zedekiah, and they're hoping that this king will have access to Yahweh that will allow him to remain in the promised land. And so Yahweh, who understands this meeting is going on, he sends Jeremiah to the meeting, the prophet, in Jeremiah 27. And Jeremiah tells Zedekiah, the king, he said, you have gathered with the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Edomites, the king of Tyre, and the king of Sidon. So remember now, Sidon has a huge claim to Israel because Jezebel is from Sidon. Okay, so all of them gathered together, and Yahweh said, you guys gathered, but you have to realize I have chosen Nebuchadnezzar. So just like Balaam was chosen by me to reject Balak and all of these ancient kings so the Israelites could move in, I have now sent Jeremiah to tell you that I've chosen Nebuchadnezzar to come in and wipe out the nation of Israel. And so that happened, and all of those kings that joined up with Zedekiah, they were now taken into Babylonian captivity. Dark day in Israel.
Yes.
Dark day in Israel. And so now who emerges during this Babylonian captivity? Daniel, the prophet Daniel emerges. And Daniel has a lot to say about these kingdoms and this kingdom shuffle. And you hear about it in Daniel chapter 2. But before we get to Daniel chapter 2, you have to realize that now the map has expanded. And the Fertile Crescent has expanded because now you have to include the 4 rivers. We're talking about the 4 rivers. What are the 4 rivers? There's the Nile, the Jordan, the Euphrates, and the Ganges. Mm-hmm. The Ganges River is the river in India.
Yes.
All right. So Daniel is about to shock the world by opening and expanding our mind to prophecy. And Daniel says there is a kingdom that is going to expand, and it's Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, but it's all based on this statue. So he told them about this statue of metals that had a gold head, a silver chest, a belly of and thighs of brass, and it had legs of iron. So he called the top Nebuchadnezzar, which is Babylon. And he said Babylon is going to extend from Egypt, the Nile, all the way to Media and Persia, which were the kingdoms that joined with Nebuchadnezzar, if you remember, to annex the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal. And then what happened next? After that, of course, we know, I just said to you that those kings, they turned on Nebuchadnezzar. And when they turned on Nebuchadnezzar, they overthrew Babylon and it became the Media-Persian Empire. Look at that purple. Look how that Media-Persian Empire expanded in 539 BC. They took over, just for reference, look at this. This is the Babylonian Empire. All right, look at the Media-Persia Empire. That's a huge expansion in less than 100 years.
Yes.
But Daniel is prophesying all of this before any of it happens. Just like how we sit and we prophesy things before anybody sees it on the calendar. Daniel is prophesying these things, and he goes from 605 BC all the way down to past our timeline.
Yes.
That's how far Daniel prophesies, man. And that's why we rely on Daniel heavily. So you have the Medes and the Persians, the Media-Persian Empire, and guess what? This empire, as bold and as big as it expanded, it could never take the Indian Empire because the Indians had the Maharanis there.
That's right.
They had the Maharanis there. And the Maharanis were some of the most potent, powerful, and spiritual people, even though media was full of sorcery, but they could not cross the Ganges River.
No.
They could not cross the Ganges River. And so after Media came Alexander the Great, which was Greece. And that is in 334 BC. And so you see the expansion. They didn't expand much, but they just took the territory in 334 BC under Alexander the Great. And then the final empire was the Roman Empire.
Yes.
And look at the size of this Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire, many people think that they invented and came up with this idea of the triumvirate, which is the League of Three.
Yeah.
The League of Three leaders. So if you see at the bottom of your screen, you see Crassus, Caesar, and Pompey. These are your Roman triumvirate. And what is a triumvirate? It's when you have a political leader who unites and holds power with 2 other leaders. Tri meaning 3. So they serve as like a Trinitarian leadership. And it's a triumvirate. So you had Crassus, Caesar, and Pompey. And the history between these 3 is too much to go into now. Maybe at another time we'll talk about the triumvirates and what they mean. But they were the political power in Rome at the time. Fast forward, and now you have another empire that also ruled with a triumvirate, and that's the Indians. Now, the Indian Empire, their triumvirate was around since 1500 BC. So they predate the Roman triumvirate by about almost 1200 years. And their triumvirate consisted of 3 levels. It was the Brahmin, who was the priest. It was the Kshatriya, who is the warrior, and the Vaisira, who is the economic power in India. So these three came together to form what's called the Indian triumvirate. And the triumvirate continues on to this day. And the last graphic we're going to talk about is this graphic, which explains how the Indian caste system works. So at the top would be the Brahmins, who are the priestly orders, and under them would be the warriors, who are the Kshatriyas. So these are the three levels of the triumvirate. And then you have the merchants, who are the Vaishyas. And then beneath that, you have the peasants. And then you have the Dalits, who what they call the untouchables. So these are people who deal with dead bodies, who are street sweepers. So in India, you had these three levels, these three triumvirates. And we've gone through triumvirates all throughout history. America's first triumvirate was a leadership of three. It was George Washington, it was James Madison, and it was Thomas Jefferson. Those three became the first three presidents because they were the ones who developed the Constitution. So triumvirates continue to move and matriculate through history, and we're dealing with them right now in 2024. Right now at your job, there's a triumvirate. You got somebody who is a bully, that's your warrior. You got somebody who's good with money, that's your economist. And then you have somebody who's a politician. You know, they're always trying to get people on their side. Your church has a triumvirate as well. You know, sometimes the triumvirate is a triumvirate of one person. might be a pastor. So you got to be careful. You got to be careful. So this is what we're talking about when we talk about tracking the Maharani. So for all of those years, they were never able. All of those kingdoms, they were never able to take the Indian territory. But one thing I want you to notice, and I'm going to do this part in 60 seconds and then I'm gone. One thing I want you to notice is that female power, all the female power that we talked about, it moves west to east. What does that mean? If you look at this map, you have all of the females who led, who were in power in Israel. You have all of them moving from west to east. So take a look at that. That's Sarah at the bottom, and then you have Potiphar, and then you have Zipporah, and then you have Bathsheba, Jezebel, and Athaliah. So you see this power historically from 2025 BC all the way to 1553 is moving and continue to move from west to east. And then you have Samuramat, who is the queen in Assyria, most powerful queen and dominant queen. And then you have Esther, who is the queen of Medo-Persia. So you see the Bible is trying to tell us something. Yes. And then you have the Maharanis, who are all the way over in the Eastern Hemisphere. And the Maharanis, the Maharanis don't only represent India. The Maharanis also represent the Asian culture. Yes. So they call India Asia, okay?
South
West
Asia.
Or South Asia.
Because Russia would be north and that's south.
So what comes after Asia? You just circle right back around to Hawaii. so politically power, right? But all power, female from a female perspective, is based on this woman right here. Her name is Semiramis. So she was the queen of Nimrod, and in all the cultures, they hold her as this powerful woman because literally, historically, she is said to be the one who taught females how to wear pants. She literally is credited with inventing the pants that the female wears, Semiramis, and you can do your history on that. She taught the Persians, they said, how to wear this. So I want you to look at what happens politically here in the U.S. The U.S. power is also moving east to west. West to east.
West to east, yep.
So look at this. That's Obama, 2016. 2008 to 2016. 2008. And then you have Trump. Trump said he's Scottish. And so that's where that map is. And then 2020, Biden. Now, Biden says he's Irish, but Biden's father is actually English. He's British. And so as you see, politically, this map is moving west to east. And now you have Kamala Harris, who's way over there on the east.
Yep.
So Biden also has connections to India. We're going to talk about that after Sarah debuts her section. So there it is. That's tracking the Maharani. That's giving you the system of power and how politically things move from west to east. So now here we are with Sarah, and she is going to be talking about...
I'm going to be talking about the Maharanian.
The seated
candidate. The seated.
Yes, the seated Maharani.
The seated Maharani. That was some good information, LeBron.
Let me give Yahweh praise for that. We give Yahweh praise for that. A lot of people don't like history because it says boring. Yeah.
Yes.
People say history is boring, but I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the seated Maharanian, as LeBron said. And as he introduced earlier, the Maharani is the female equivalent to the Maharaji, who is the male Hindu monarch of India. Maharani means great queen. And from the political sphere in the U.S. 2024 election, we again see the Democratic running mate for Joe Biden as Kamala Harris.
Yes.
And a new face of similar heritage on the Republican campaign trail, Nikki Haley.
Yes.
Both Kamala Harris and Nikki Haley have Indian ancestry, to which they are two sides of the same coin, pointing us back to the Far East from a biblical standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
From an interfaith standpoint, Kamala Harris grew up as both Baptist and Hindu.
Mm-hmm.
She once quoted that she grew up attending services at a Black Baptist church and at a Hindu temple.
Mm-hmm.
Hindus believe in the doctrines of samsara, the continuous cycle of life, death, and reincarnation.
Mm-hmm.
They also believe in karma, which to them is the universal law of cause and effect. Hindus view everything in the universe as God and believe that each person is intrinsically divine, and the purpose of life is to seek and realize the divinity within all of us. The Hindus also accept all other faiths and religious paths. Kamala is now married to Douglas Emhoff, who is of the Jewish faith, to which Kamala has said that she also shares in Jewish celebrations and traditions with her husband. Kamala Harris has quoted, "I've learned that faith is not only something we express in church and prayerful reflection, but also in the way we live our lives, do our work, and pursue our prospective callings." Wise woman. She regularly attends church, and her base church is the Third Baptist Church of San Francisco. Her pastor quoted her as being a spiritual person and quintessential scholar. Nikki Haley, on the other hand, grew up Sikh. Born Nimrata Nikki Randhawa, she was raised in Sikhism, but her parents encouraged her to visit various churches in order to understand the surrounding culture. This allowed her to later marry her husband, Michael Haley, who is a Methodist. She had both Sikh and Methodist wedding ceremonies and soon after converted to Christianity. What I found interesting is that during Nikki Haley's campaign, she came up against a lot of criticism as it pertains to her conversion into Christianity. Some said they were not buying it, or that this Christian bit that she is professing has alternative motives. And serious churchgoers and political opponents called her conversion to Christianity a conversion of convenience. As it has been revealed, Nikki Haley still occasionally visits Sikh gurdwaras out of respect for her family's heritage. And she has toured the religion's holiest site, the Golden Temple in India. Many people see her candidacy as a good opportunity for America to learn more about her form of faith, Sikhism. If you don't know what Sikhism is, it basically was developed from the spiritual teachings of Guru Nanak in the late 1400s, early 1500s. It teaches that living a practical, active, and creative life of fidelity, self-control, purity, and truthfulness is above metaphysical faith and metaphysical truth, and that the ideal man establishes union with God, knows his will, and carries out God's will. It teaches its followers to transform the 5 thieves, which are lust, rage, greed, attachment, and ego. It also synthesizes its own unique teachings and practices with beliefs from Islam and Hinduism. Sikhism claims to be the 5th largest world religion after Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism, though it does not evangelize, and counts only a modest 30 million followers. Still, it is double the global number for Judaism. Sikhism also rejects claims that any particular religious tradition has a monopoly on absolute truth. Well, I absolutely reject this lie told by Sikhism because it contradicts the word of Yahweh, which is the absolute truth.
Yeah.
Amen.
John 14:6 states, Yeshua answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. 2 Timothy 2:15 says, do your best to present yourself to Yahweh as one approved, a worker who does not need to be ashamed and who correctly handles the word of truth. And 1 John 1:6 further says, if we claim to have fellowship with Yahweh and yet walk in the darkness, we lie and do not live out the truth. We on the deep believe that Yahweh's word is the absolute truth.
Amen.
And if you have it, if you receive it, and
Yes.
if you live by it, you are made absolutely free.
Amen.
Amen.
Yes.
In Biden's recent State of the Union address just last week on March 7th, he called out the power of women in America. Biden's call out was a simple reminder that we are again in the age of the woman.
Absolutely.
America is quite familiar with women in leadership. I'd like to remind you that in our Deep Dive Live Season 2, Episode 12, Political Powers episode back in 2020, I shared a whole lot of information about the power of the woman, biblically and politically. Check it out on our channels to learn more. And from that episode, I'd like to remind you about the Iroquois League, also
Yes.
known as the Iroquois Confederacy.
Yes.
About 500 years ago in the American Indian Iroquois community, women were the keepers of culture. They were responsible for defining the political, social, spiritual, and economic norms of the tribe. The League was comprised of 5 nations who managed their affairs through a highly organized parliament or senate. The council members were peace chiefs who were nominated by the women and powerful matrons of the tribes. Even the Iroquois family groups were linked through the female line, and the women decided the laws of the land. Here we are about 500 years later, watching 2 women of Indian heritage at the forefront of political leadership in the United States of America. And both Kamala Harris and Nikki Haley mainly attribute their motivations, success, and accomplishments to experiences that came through their mothers and their maternal lineage.
Yeah.
Kamala's Indian background comes by way of her mother, Shamala Gopalan, who migrated to the United States when she was 19 years old from the southern Indian city of Madras, now Chennai, India. She attended the University of California, Berkeley, receiving her doctorate in nutrition and endocrinology. After her migration to the United States, she married Donald Harris, Kamala's father, who is a Black Jamaican. Kamala's mother received her PhD and became a breast cancer researcher and a world-renowned scientist. Kamala once quoted in CNN Politics, she said, "My mother was very proud of her Indian heritage and taught us, me and my sister Maya, to share in the pride about our culture. We used to go back to India every couple of years, and one of the most influential people in our lives, in my life in particular, in addition to my mother, was my grandfather, P.V. Gopalan, who actually held a post in India that was like the Secretary of State position in this country. My grandfather was one of the original independence fighters in India, and some of my fondest memories from childhood were walking along the beach with him after he retired and lived in Basant Nagar in what was then called Madras." Kamala went on to say, "When we think about it, India is the oldest democracy in the world. So that is part of my background, and without question has had a great deal of influence on what I do today and who I am." It's no coincidence that both Kamala Harris and Nikki Haley are specifically of Indian heritage. Now, let's talk about Nikki Haley for a moment. Nikki Haley's parents were both born in the Amritsar, Punjab region of India to wealthy families. Her father, Ajit Singh Randhawa, was the son of a commanding officer in the British colonial army. And Haley wrote in her autobiography that her mother, Raj Randhawa, studied law at the University of New Delhi and was offered the first female judgeship in India, but her own family blocked it because she was a woman. Nikki's parents emigrated from India in the 1960s, and she was born in Bamberg, South Carolina, under the name Nimrata Nikki Randhawa, but adopted her middle name Nikki, which means little one in Punjabi. I previously mentioned that Nikki Haley was raised Sikh, and she has publicly talked about her conversion to Christianity. She once said the language barrier was what ultimately led to her decision to convert. Nikki once quoted, "Christianity spoke to me. It wasn't political." Now, briefly, I'll talk about the gods of Hinduism and Sikhism. In Hinduism, it is believed that there are more than 33 million gods and goddesses.
Wow.
Yeah. It is also found that each Hindu family has their own god or goddess that they pray to.
Wow.
It is said that Hinduism also has a trinity of Hindu gods. They are Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the preserver, and Shiva, the destroyer. Each of the members of the trinity have what they call avatars, who are secondary gods under them. Alternatively, and in short, in Sikhism, they believe there is only one God, which is genderless and eternal. They refer to God as Waheguru. And as it relates to Yeshua being God, they don't believe that he can be God, because to them, God cannot be born. In 2024, we see both Kamala Harris and Nikki Haley's Indian ancestral background continuing to thrive and maintain its global presence. The Madras Indian territory, which holds Kamala Harris's maternal ancestry, was an important center for trade between India and Europe because of the development of its harbor in the 18th century. Today, the territory is now called Chennai, since its name change in August of 1996. One of Madras meanings is a light cotton fabric of various weaves, especially one in multicolored plaid or stripes. Amritsar holds Nikki Haley's ancestry. It is the economic capital of Punjab. It is a big commercial trading textile and tourist hub of Punjab. Amritsar means the lake of the holy nectar, and Punjab means land of 5 rivers, as Punj means 5 and Ab means water. Kamala Harris and Nikki Haley share one national anthem through the link of their Indian ancestry. India's much-loved national anthem, Jana Gana Mana, literally translates as, "Thou art the ruler of the minds of all people." In 2023, to mark India's Independence Day, 3-time Grammy Award-winning Indian composer Ricky Kesh led the mighty Royal Philharmonic Orchestra in a performance of the Indian national anthem at Abbey Road Studios in London. The lyrics of India's national anthem declares, "Thou art the ruler of the minds of all people, dispenser of India's destiny. Thy name rouses the hearts of Punjab, Sindhu, Gujarat, and Maratha, of the Dravida and Orissa and Bengal. It echoes in the hills of the Vindhyas and Himalayas, mingles in the music of Jamuna and Ganges, and is chanted by the waves of the Indian Sea. They pray for thy blessings and sing thy praise. The saving of all people waits in thy hand. Thou dispenser of India's destiny, victory, victory, victory to thee." Victory is what Kamala Harris experienced with her presidential mate Joe Biden in the 2020 election.
Yep.
This brought a new focus on India and its presence in the free world. Here's a video clip of India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, addressing Congress about Kamala Harris.
India has inspired millions of people around the world. whether through philosophy and theology, the power of civil disobedience, or the commitment to democracy. Throughout the Indo-Pacific, India helps promote a free and open region. When my sister Maya and I were growing up, our mother would take us from the Bay Area to India pretty much every other year. I recall my grandfather teaching me lessons about not just what it means to have a democracy, but to keep a democracy. I did clearly understand and do recall stories about the freedom fighters and the nation's founding heroes, and about the independence of India. And I do believe it is these lessons that I learned at a very young age that first inspired my interest in public service.
Throughout your history, you embrace people from around the world, and you have made them equal partners in the American dream. There are millions here who have roots in India. Some of them sit proudly in this chamber. And there is one behind me who
These are not part of my prepared remarks, but when
It is evidential that between the two candidates presented, Kamala Harris is the Maharani of choice. From a cultural and demographical standpoint, like the multicolored meaning of Madras, the place of her maternal ancestry, she sits from a standpoint of the Black woman and Indian Maharani. And also, if we look at the timeline we presented in our 2020 election episode, it predicts a second term for Joe Biden and his running mate, Maharani Harris. The writing is clearly on the wall. For most Indians, Harris's path to vice president-elect as the first woman, the first Black candidate, and the first Indian American epitomizes the achievements of the Indian community in the United States. If we look closely, India has had a female leader almost 60 years ago when Indira Gandhi became the country's first and only female prime minister in 1966. Kamala Harris's contribution to her Indian ancestry from a world political aspect is trending. But for Nikki Haley, this is not so. Though she has accomplished great accolades, she is minimized on the political sphere compared to Kamala Harris. And it is partly due to her religious background and her questionable self-identity issues. Nikki Haley decided from a young age that using her middle name, Nikki, was easier to fit in with all the other American names than that of her birth name, Nimrata. Even during her presidential campaign in January, Donald Trump mocked her birth name, calling her Nimbra instead of Nimrata, and stressed the fact that she is the daughter of immigrants. Many agree that though women usually adopt their husband's last names upon marriage, for Nikki Haley, it was a welcome change because it was easier to assimilate into the white world of America, as opposed to carrying her maiden last name of Randhawa. It was revealed that in 2001, Haley also listed her race as white on her voter registration card. She would reflect the kind of assimilationism that most Indian Americans, most South Asians, actually don't do. They don't change their name and they don't convert their religion. And because of Nikki's identity struggle, she fails to empathize with people of color, especially Black people fighting against the racist state of America to this date. Because of this, it is no surprise that she dropped out of the presidential race last week. But there may still be a place for her in this 2024 presidential race, if Donald Trump plays his cards right. I'd like to close my segment with a video of Nikki Haley that I thought was interesting, highlighting her position of racism in America.
Governor, I'm dying to vote for you. I mean that sincerely. I want to give all my energy and all my heart behind your campaign, but I was upset when you made the reference that you didn't think America had racism. And my question is, I was disappointed, number one, obviously, but I want to give you a chance. Did you say that because you felt like you needed to say that to the audience? Because I can say, I'm dying to vote for you, and that hurt me. So I would love for you to clarify that, please.
So first of all, I never said that there was not racism in America. There absolutely is racism in America. I said that America was not a racist country. And the whole point of that is, and Charles, you'll appreciate this, when I grew up, the only Indian family in a small rural southern town, we weren't white enough to be white, we weren't black enough to be black. They didn't know who we were, what we were, or why we were there. If my mom had told me that we lived in a racist country, I would have grown up never thinking I could be governor, never thinking I could be ambassador, never thinking I could run for president. But my mom always said, your job is not to show them how you're different. Your job is to show them how you're similar. And it's amazing how that lesson on the playground played throughout my life, whether it was the corporate world, as governor, as ambassador, that once I was ever presented with a challenge, if I first talked about the things we had in common, people would let their guard down, and then we could go towards a solution.
But Governor, I think most people heard you say
our job should be,
Governor, I think most people heard you
our
say
job should
that
be
you did not
that we
believe
stomp
that
out
America had ever
racism.
been a racist country. That's the problem. That we heard you say.
That's
that,
not
that
what
is
I
what
said.
We heard. Okay.
So you saw that moment from Black Twitter.
Yes.
As she was speaking, and Gail was like, your mouth is moving, but we're not hearing what you're saying.
No, we're not.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's clarify this, because I know people love to hear it come from the mouth of.
She says she has a double tongue.
Yeah, yes, she does. Yes, she does.
So that's it. Yeah.
Now, we talked about this graphic in 2020, our political episode. We did a full episode on this one graphic.
We did.
Because this is a timeline that spans centuries. And we only went from 1936 up to 2020.
Yeah.
But this graphic, if you were to study this and you were to read into this, you would realize that this election, we called the 2024 election back in 2020.
We did.
So study this graphic.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yes, he is. Study this graphic, and that will allow you this. We put this together in 2019, this graphic. And I remember my wife, she's used to these prophetic words. So yeah, whatever I say or whatever she says, I accept it. Whatever I say, she accepts it. So there's nothing off the wall with these things. Like, we sit down and we call out coronavirus ending February 2023 in 2020. And everybody's like, what? Right, Joe?
Yeah.
But she's like, this is another day in the Bronze Embassy. Doesn't matter. Because we know because we hear these confirmations. But I remember sharing this information with Joe about 2020 and 2019. And I said, Biden's going to be the candidate. After I shared this post in 2019 on our Deep Call Facebook page. And when I shared it with him, about 3 weeks later, they had an early poll, and Biden was like 6 out of 10 in the early poll.
That's right, was way behind.
Yeah, Joe said, are you sure you heard right?
Yes. He was behind the race.
Yeah, he was out. No, they were counting him out. They said he's too old. He has no clout after Obama left office.
Right.
You've been out of the game for like 4 years. Where are you going in this race with all of these young people like Buttigieg and Elizabeth Warren, she's not as old as him, but she's not as young as, the other people who are in the running. And by May, it was like Biden is going to be the shoe in. Well, Bernie Sanders is not. But the millennials love Bernie because Bernie is a socialist, man.
I like him
too. Bernie said, "I want to give everybody $10,000 a month. I don't care what color you are. The government will take care of everybody." So Bernie had the hearts and the minds of the young people, But Biden made it in. But at the end of the day, this is the statement, right? This is the statement that we're making. The Maharanian candidate of choice is Kamala Harris. And if you look at that graphic, if you look at those three graphics, especially the one at the top, you see what's going on, right? In India, you've got the Maharaja and you've got the Maharani. He came to Congress and he verified it.
He did.
Okay, so it's already been verified. Now, in the graphics at the bottom, you've got the dynamic trio, and that's telling a story as well. And we're not going to reveal what that story is. Maybe in 2026, not right now. It's not time for that. But Sarah, thank you very much. I applaud you. That was fantastic, man. That was fantastic. I enjoyed that teaching. I enjoyed this so much. And so now we're going to turn the hot seat over to our brother. Brother Joseph Komenin. He is the scholar. He is going to be talking about the Hammurabi Codex. So if you recall that triumvirate in Mesopotamia, you had Shamshi-Dad, who was in Assyria, and then you had Hammurabi, who was in Babylon, and then you had Abraham, who was over in Canaan. Between Canaan and Egypt, migrating. But all of this was happening in the early 1800s, moving down into the 1770s. So all of these guys are alive at the same time, and they're receiving instructions, laws, and information from, as they would say, the gods.
Yes.
Okay. So the Hammurabi Codex is something that we have to really look into, because this is important for us to understand in 2024. Moving forward, because this will become the law of the land spiritually. So, Joe, tell us about the Hammurabi Codex, please, brother.
All right.
Well, this is what I'm coming in now.
Okay.
The Hammurabi Codex actually is being written, of course, by Hammurabi.
Yes.
And there are about 282 coordinates. But they are not just code per se. They are actually, if I was to say, they are the judicial constitution law of the land. So those codes, while we're talking about them today, they were not written on papyrus, meaning that on paper. They were written on stone tablet. And because they were written on a stone tablet, they are kept, they could be preserved to even this day. So they are not just a code, but they are also codes to provide people with a concrete explanation or personal and professional, how shall I say, views about dispute and also judgment of fairness. Pretty much. So they were very, very profound. So profound that today they are in our society. Now, who wrote this? Of course, we know that it was written by Hammurabi, and it was written in 1780. He wrote those codes in 1780. Now, the brother talked about it. In 1780, Hammurabi was a king of the Babylonia, okay? So while he was reigning from 1808 to 1776, at the same time, we have Shamshi-Adad, which was in Assyria, which was also ruling Syria from 1792 to 1750. So you have these two kings ruling side by side. So it is very important that we mention that. Why? Because they're going to play a very important role, especially Shamshi Adad as we go down. So yes, he wrote those codes around that time, and while he was ruling. Now, I think he had a graphic earlier to show the code that are written on stone tablets. Yes, and as you can see it, and that was preserved even to this date. Because we talk about stone, and I believe those are not just regular stone. Those are some actually stone that was actually implemented pretty good. Now, we're talking about the Hammurabi Code. How does the Hammurabi Code actually influence the U.S. Constitution today?
Yes.
Question is that you want to know, well, what does that have to do? Well, they do influence the U.S. Constitution. Why? Because you have to look at the United States. The first began with the first, they drafted the first Constitution, which was the central, where the central government was weak. And that didn't work so good. So the founding father had to go deep into it. And if you look at America, you have to understand exactly that they look into first the English law, and then also not only look into the English law, but also look into the Roman law. But America Constitution, America wanted to be a government of law and not of man. And that was the key. A government of a rule of not rule by men, but of law. So when they look about the law, they look into the English, and of course they probably look into the Bill of Rights, but they look into the Roman. When they look into the Roman law, because they began to study, because remember they had to form the Constitution. When they look into the Roman law, they found that not only the Roman law, they found that the Roman law had Hammurabi Code. How the Hammurabi Code appeared. Justinian the First, which is also of the Byzantine Empire, is also known as Justinian the Great, who is an Eastern Roman emperor of Constantinople, and he ruled from 527 to 565 AD. He used the Hammurabi Code and he created the Justinian Code, which in Latin is called Codex Justinianus. And that was one part of it. And also, it's also called the Corpus Juris Civilis. And that was one part of it. But it was so powerful. So now, when they look into that, into the law, and they found the Hammurabi Code, now they have to go deeper now. So from that now, they move now. Now, we have to understand where they come from, because sometimes we say, well, how does it go? These things are not about coincidence, because when we're talking about America, we have to understand where she comes from.
That's right.
She also comes from the 10 toes. 10 toes because, of course, whether she comes from Anglo-Saxon or Frankfurt or the Burgundy or whatsoever, the different part that actually came up here, so that's the 10 toes, and that 10 toes come out of the timeline of Daniel. Daniel mentioned that. So now
you're talking about the statue of metals. Yes,
feet of
Daniel
iron and clay.
feet of iron and clay.
He started first with the statue on top, and then he got the iron. So now I'm passing from the iron
to
the iron and clay.
That's right.
The feet. The 10 toes that Daniel talked about, which is a Rome being divided into 10 pieces. So now when they look into it, they saw the Hammurabi Code. With them seeing the Hammurabi Code now, they say, well, we love the Roman, which of course we know that they kept part of the Roman law. That's why today, if you look in American judicial system, they have a lot of Latin words.
A lot of Latin, correct.
You know more of it than I do. A few words that we can talk about. And when they look into it now, they went behind that now. And they began to study Hammurabi Code. And when they began to study the Hammurabi Code, they found some very important stuff on it. Not only they found some important stuff on it, but they even were able to draft 10 code of the Hammurabi that actually they put into the U.S. Constitution. In other words, they took packet of it, and I'm just going to go through some of those. The first one was the offense against administration of the law, which is if a man is accused of another man and is charged with homicide, but cannot bring proof against him, his accuser shall be killed. In other words, So we didn't do the kill part. But in other words, you have to bring a proof.
Yes.
You have to
Innocent
bring-
until proven guilty.
Innocent until proven guilty, yes.
You have to
Hammurabi.
bring proof into it. So that's the Hammurabi Code. But we didn't do the kill part. But so that is part of our judicial system. Then now on the property offenses, they say stealing and receiving. But this is the one that I love the most. Theft by receiving, because that, you know, in my life that passed through me. So theft by receiving, you have people that are steal and they sell you this thing on the black market. Somebody can say, hey man, I got this phone here for $50. Well, you don't care, you buy this phone. And later on somebody say, hey man, it's a stolen property. He said, listen, I bought it.
Right.
It has nothing to do with it.
Yes.
Theft by receiving.
Yes.
So here it is there, theft by receiving.
Right.
So you have to be careful of that. So those things were offenses. So it's part of the law, the judicial law today. And then and those codes are part of the Hammurabi Code. If you study, there's 282. There is a section 6 to 13, 14, 16 to 20, 21. So all those sections are in it. So what they did is that they put them in black, and then they actually made a subtitle of what they needed, and then they embedded into their law. So that's 2. 3, land and houses. They say if a man has a debt against the storm, okay, or devastated in a field, flood or sweep away from crops, in other words, he has to be paid back. So here it is. That's why we have all those insurance that comes in. So if you have natural disaster that comes into it, so these things here were already set. So they took that, and that's why we have all of this. That's why the insurance company cannot go around it, because when you go to court, they have to pay, because that's part of natural disaster.
Right.
So
Out of the Hammurabi Codes.
yes, the Hammurabi Code, they have to honor it. And then when it comes to commerce, they say loan, trading, and fraud by courier, and also pledge of person for debt. They say if a merchant should give silver to a trading agent for an investment venture, or the trading agent lost that investment on the journey, it shall return the silver back to the journey. So here it is. It is the same thing. So if I give you money to buy something, and then along the way you said that went out, no, that has nothing to do with me. You actually have to give me back my money, because that's a bad investment. Right. Because in other words, you didn't say what you're gonna do. So and these are the things that people take to court, and then the judge award.
That was on an episode of Little House on the Prairie when the guy sold them the land and it was wrongful.
Yes.
So they got the money back.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So that is in it. And then marriage and family is in there too. Let's say if a man takes in adoption a young child at birth, in his he can rear him, that child can never be reclaimed. Same thing in adoption. And matter of fact, Yeshua even talks, some of them talk about the adoption, Yeshua talks about it. Matter of fact, if you look at some of the code that they're talking about, it's the same thing. So if you adopt a child, no matter what happened, the child is yours.
Right.
The child is yours, and it can never be reclaimed.
Yes.
So that is why some of us who are born again, we are adopted.
Absolutely.
We are in the covenant of Yeshua.
Yes.
Amen.
So this code found their way into the American judicial law.
Yes.
Assault on a father. They say if you should blind the eye, of course, they say eye for eye and a tooth for a tooth. So in other words, if you do something to someone, of course, we don't do an eye for eye and a tooth for tooth. But there is something called, what's the word? Vengeance? No, not vengeance. Retribution. That means that you have to pay back. And that is the reason why when restitution, that's the word I was looking for. Okay. Even in an accident, when you lose, matter of fact, there is a law that says if you lose a finger, it costs you that much. If you lose an arm, it costs you that much. If you a wrist, if you lose an arm, it costs you that much. So all of this here, so that is in it. We don't do eye for eye, but there's restitution.
Okay.
So yes, that is
after Yeshua, before Yeshua.
That is part of it. So professionalism is part of it, and
After
agriculture.
Yeshua? They stoned Stephen after Yeshua. So they were still keeping those Hammurabi.
But see, because they weren't converted. That was
the Pharisees.
Yeah. Lame salt.
So all of this here, all of those codes found their way into our Constitution today. Now, we talk about how this found itself into the American system, and if you look at it, it's not only the American system. If you look at most of those other people use it. Matter of fact, Napoleon Bonaparte, he also used the Hammurabi Code. Matter of fact, it's called the Napoleonic Code. So all of these use it because it is something that shapes the culture, and it's something that talk about judicial system. And to this day, whether you like it or not, they have kind of shaped a little bit better, but it is sound foundation, and it's still being used into today. Now, Assyrian, Babylonian, and the Hammurabi Code. Now we talk about, is it still running today in America? Yes, it is still running today. But then the question is, how it find its way into America? Well, this is why it was very important in the beginning when I mentioned how Shamshi-Adad was ruling Assyria, and then Hammurabi was ruling Babylon. Now, after the death of Shamshi-Adad, which was ruling Assyria, after his death, Hammurabi now began his expansion in 1772. So, do you have a map somewhere?
Yes.
Yeah, pull up a map.
Yes.
Because the people need to see exactly where the expansion began and how far it went. So it began his, while he pulling up and continue.
Yes, keep teaching.
So it began his expansion. So he conquered a city called Lhasa, which was a very wealthy city. Now you have to know where Shamshi-Adad is in Babylon. So he is all the way down in, or should we say, in southeast.
Yes.
And he began his campaign. So he also, in 1761, he conquered Mary. By 1755, he marched into Asher, which is Assyria, all the way up to the northeast. And he conquered, he took over Assyria. Now, with that victory, when he took over Assyria, he automatically ruled over the entire Mesopotamia. Completely, he ruled it. Now, he took over, so he began from this campaign on the southeast, and he began to stretch it up to the northeast, and he stretched it all the way down to the west. But he just didn't stop to the west. He continued moving to the west. And if you look at to the west, then we have Canaan, we have Israel. So the Hammurabi Code continued to cross his way past the Mediterranean Sea. He passed over Africa. It crosses over the Atlantic Ocean.
Right.
And once you cross over the Atlantic Ocean, the farthest west that you get now is America.
California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you see how he found his way.
Yeah.
Yes.
America.
So that expansion continued, and he found his way into the land. Now we talk about Ashurbanipal.
So there it is right there.
Yes,
That's
there you go.
graphic.
So we see Hammurabi all the way at the bottom, and he began his campaign, moving all the way up to Assyria. And when he conquered Assyria, then he began his campaign westward, all the way up.
Yes.
Now, if you follow that, and if you have a globe, you will see exactly how the campaign is moving westward,
That's
right.
and has found his way into America.
Absolutely.
Now we're talking about Ashurbanipal. And Ashurbanipal is what I call the last great king of Assyria. Matter of fact, he called himself the last great king of the world. Just like Muhammad Ali used to say, I'm the champion of the world.
I'm the champ.
Yes.
The champ is here.
Yes, he claimed that he is the last great king of the world. But he was not just a king of, when I say Assyria, he had actually the entire Mesopotamia. But this is what he did. He was able to preserve the Hammurabi Code. And that was a key. He preserved it, that he created a library. And it was the first largest library in the world.
Yeah.
Imagine, now you might say, well, what are you talking about? Today, if you go to the library, you have books, and now we pass books, so you have scanned and things that are online now. But you can imagine all those codes that are written on stone tablets. These are some heavy stone. So he was able to structure a library, and he preserved every code. if you look at Mesopotamia, he is actually called the father of chronicle because of what he has done. Today, many people are talking about his library, and because he was able to preserve it, that's why some of those tablets were able to be found.
That's true.
Into the United States. And what his name means? His name means creator of air. But Ashurbanipal was not just a king. Matter of fact, when I said it was the last great king, after Ashurbanipal, of course, we know he's got extra. From after him, the empire of Assyria fell apart.
Absolutely, yep.
And from that moment until the king, but then Nebuchadnezzar took over, and then we began the statue, Nebuchadnezzar, Medo Persia, but that was the last. That's why he called himself the last great king. So he was not just a creator, because they say that his name means creator of an air. But we need to understand that Ashurbanipal also it is the grandson of Sennacherib. And we know exactly what Sennacherib is. For those of us who know the Bible, is in the Bible. Sennacherib was in the Bible. When he came out, the Bible said he put siege over Judah. He put siege. And even tell King Hezekiah, say, I hear what your God is talking about. But your matter of fact, your God said that I should come and take over this land. So he was a grandson. So his grandfather was already campaigning. And after was his father. Then now he shows up on the scene and he conquered. But what he did is that he went into Egypt and he conquered Egypt. And then when he conquered Egypt now, he said, all right, this is me. He never crossed over India, but he was the king of the world.
That's right. Nobody could cross that. Nobody could cross that Ganges, man. You could cross the Euphrates as an Assyrian king.
But you cannot. Matter of fact, that was the downfall of Alexander the Great.
Yes.
Because when he wanted to take over India, and it fell down, it didn't go through, so he had to
couldn't make it. That's right. Yes.
So that is my section on it. But before I go, I don't know if you have a section, a picture to show that the Hammurabi Code being found today in the U.S. Constitution. Because sometimes we talk about this thing and people say, "Well, you guys are making things up."
Yeah, that's true.
No, we're not making things up. These are
that's true.
We don't want them. They actually credit Hammurabi, and by credit him, they have to actually have a stone tablet and put it there because, of course, one thing that they're not going to go for plagiarism.
Right.
So they're going to make sure that they go to the source. This is the source of it. So they credit to it.
So what you're seeing right there in that graphic that looks like an obelisk, that's what a stele is. So Samuramat, as I said, she was the first. There were only 3. Now, this kingdom was from 2500 BC all the way up to 32 when the Babylonians came in and they took the Assyrian kingdom. She was one of 3 women who put up steles. So usually it would be the king who would put up a stele, which is a stone tablet that declares the great things that this king has done. So Hammurabi's stele is his codex, and that's what they have on display. Now, they would put these informations on stone tablets. They would create these steles, and then they would also create the reliefs. And by the way, she was the first one to do it. She was the first female in her stele. She said, "You made me." It was a clap back. It was, she's like a real black woman. She's like, "You made me and my husband cross over the Euphrates River to come and deal with you." But the one of the other ones was one of Sennacherib's wives. They don't mention who she was. She did a stele as well. But in the U.S. Supreme Court, this is what they have. They have this relief in the U.S. Supreme Court. And what that means, what a relief is they have these depictions that they put. And so you go in, and it's like a monument. You go to these places. It's not just a court that you're walking into. They have statues and figurines and steles to show who's in power in the nation. That's why I said be very careful. What people bring into your home, and they say, "Oh, I'm giving you this gift." Don't accept gifts from any and everybody.
That's right.
Especially gifts that are talismans. You have to recognize these things. These pearls, gems and crystals and all of these things. Even jewelry. You have to be very careful accepting these things.
Figurines.
But in the U.S. Supreme Court, they have this this depiction, and it's in a relief form, meaning somebody actually went and they chiseled this out.
That's right.
And that's what you see in the center of your screen. These are who they call the three lawgivers.
Yes.
And there's an issue with this. I'll explain to you why. At the front of the pack, you have Pharaoh, who is leading these three. And then in second place, you have Hammurabi. And then behind Hammurabi, you have Moses.
Right.
And they say this is in order of the laws that were given. So the Egyptians, they say, developed the first codex law. Hammurabi came, and this was, 2100 BC. Hammurabi came 400 years later, 1774, I think he said the date was.
Yes.
And he developed the Hammurabi codes. And Shamshi-Adad, who was in Assyria, he said, oh, these codes are great. I'm going to adopt this for Assyria, and we're going to create a partnership. What my brother didn't tell you was that as soon as Shamshi-Adad died and his son came to power, then Hammurabi used the codes against Shamshi-Adad's son, and he made them subject to the Babylonians.
Yes,
So
and they
Babylon,
paid taxes
and they had to pay
and all
taxes,
that.
and they became servants, civil
Right.
servants of Babylon. They expanded the empire. Eventually, the Assyrians took the empire back, but Hammurabi, he's a dangerous guy.
Yes, very dangerous.
Yeah.
Even to this day.
Even to this day. So they put Moses in the back because they said the Egyptians got the law in 2100 BC. And then Hammurabi got his law from his God in 1774 BC. And then Moses got his law from his God in 1440 BC. So actually, historically, most historians who are not believers, they say that Moses stole the law, the Torah, from Hammurabi.
That's
And so the U.S. Supreme Court is supporting this idea by putting Moses at the back. So many people say, the United States is founded on the Bible, and this was the original law of the land, and now in 2024, they're changing the law, and they need to go back to God, and you better you better do your research. You better do your research. So yes, that is what they have in the Constitution, and they also have a depiction. My son Aaron, he was doing his American history this year, and he said we were studying at home. Our family, we were studying Assyria last year, and when that class came up, he said, "Dad, you wouldn't believe this. They have the Hammurabi codes hanging in the house of the U.S. What is it, Aaron? Department of Justice, right? Yeah. So they have a picture of Hammurabi hanging in the U.S. Department of Justice because his 10 laws from his 282 laws made it into the U.S. Constitution. And who did that? The U.S. triumvirate of Madison, Jefferson, and Washington, right?
Yeah.
The triumvirate. So this whole system is just a cycle. It's a cycle, and this cycle is about to come to an end. This is the last hurrah.
Yes.
Nothing comes after this.
That's it.
Once you get down to installing the Hammurabi codes and being subservient to those codes and honoring those codes, now you begin to submit your powers politically to the principalities that were in
the
ancient,
regions,
ancient Assyria.
Yep.
So Ashurbanipal, he was one of the he was the last great king of Assyria because he made this statement. What was the statement he made concerning the standing army?
Oh, he says that we are all Assyrian.
That's what he said.
He said we are all Assyrian, and to be Assyrian, because he was the last great king, so he was going into a military campaign.
Yes.
And to that military campaign, he had actually his knee on the people's neck.
Yes.
So he was ruling. So he said we are all Assyrian, but there is only one way. If you want to be Assyrian, just join the Assyrian army, but it doesn't just stop there. You have to worship Ashur, the god of Assyria.
Yes.
And people were joining him. So we all Assyrian.
That's what he said.
So that's what he was. Join the military and then worship. And if you don't join the military, as long as you submit yourself to the God of the land.
It's always the catch.
That's it. Wow. So there, brother, that was some heavy information.
Nice.
People don't realize we sit here and we talk for 12 to 15 minutes about this information, but it takes weeks of research to gather all of this, because these things are not readily taught. Even in, especially in the church system, we teach maybe from 3 or 4 chapters of the Bible consistently. You hear about the story of Moses.
Yes.
You hear about Abraham and go get your blessing, and the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous. And then they, like Joe always said, they don't touch Revelation, just the first 3 chapters. So this information is not presently available. You have to do some deep diving and deep research, and then figure out how it all fits together.
The Holy Spirit guides.
Yes, the Holy Spirit guides, so that you can see what's going on politically in the business arena, and how all of these things connect, especially in media.
Yes, especially. And brother, as you mentioned, we say, how is Assyrian still running today? Now, you mentioned about submitting.
Yes.
This is where Ashurbanipal said.
Yes.
He said to become, you have to be join the army, but you don't have to join the army. He said, submit to the God of Usher, then you become Assyrian.
Right.
So really and truly, if you look at it today, we are Assyrian.
We're all Assyrian.
Because now we have the Hammurabi Code, and guess who are we submitting to? The God Usher.
Yes.
And as long as you submit to the God Usher, you are Assyrian. You say, well, brother, I am not. But if if the head submits to Usher, who are you? Forget you. If the head submit to Usher, you nobody.
Yeah, this is the system that Yahweh put in place. Yahweh said, if you love me, you'll do what? Keep my commands. Meaning it goes to the law. And the church is so dysfunctional. The church says, oh, those laws, they've been abolished. Yeshua came, he died on the cross. So those old laws, they don't matter anymore. But then you look at the world system, and the world system is basing everything. On these old laws from the same region.
This ancient
Nothing new.
But then you're sitting in church, and they tell you Yahweh's law, half of the law has already been fulfilled, so don't worry about it anymore, right? But then you go to your job, and you go to the court system, you go to the bank, and all of these other institutions are basing their guiding principles on these laws.
Yes.
And you wonder why the church has no power, because the power comes from the law. Right?
Amen.
Because if you say I'm guilty,
yes,
you have to prove it.
That's right.
Why? Why can't you just pick up a gun and shoot me because I robbed you? You can't, because the law says you don't have the power to do that.
Innocent until proven guilty.
Yes. And so Yahweh has given us laws. Moses got the law in 1440, yes. But Moses' law that he received from Yahweh was based on instructions that were given to Adam.
Yes.
So in truth, Moses should have been at the front of the line.
That's right.
not behind. If you look throughout history, all of the biblical heroes that we try to emulate in our walk because of their connection to Yahweh, each of them went into the enemy's camp.
That's right.
And they proved Yahweh's faithfulness above and beyond what the law of the land said was possible or necessary.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's how we're supposed to operate. But if you don't understand Yahweh's law, then you don't know how to utilize it to come in to contention and into war and in campaigns against these people. And so Yeshua, all of the time, the Pharisees would come to them, the Sadducees would come to them, the Romans would come to them, and he would say, what is written in the law?
Yeah.
Yes.
Why would he reference that if all of that was to be abolished once he died?
Exactly.
The law is never abolished.
That makes no sense.
Oh.
It will never be abolished.
Oh, man.
So Hammurabi,
the church says fulfill it.
Oh,
Hammurabi
man.
has the law of reasonable doubt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the law of reasonable doubt. It's in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, we don't pick on the church or the political environment or anything like that. But what we want to understand is the context of the truth.
Yes.
Because everybody now they say live your truth. It means you have your own truth. You have your truth. I have my truth. But this has happened before historically. This happened in Judges. In Judges, the Bible said that the Israelites, who were Yahweh's people, said that everybody did what was right in their own eyes, which means they had a system where everybody said whatever I think is right is right, and Yahweh left them because of it.
Yeah,
and they fell to the
we also
Philistines.
see it in Genesis during Noah's time.
Oh boy,
That's the direction
yeah.
we're
That
in.
speaking of that, our very next episode, we're going to be dealing with the Maleficent Seven.
Yes.
I guess that's time to talk about that, right? In our very next episode, we're going to be dealing with the Maleficent Seven. Who are the Maleficent Seven? What do they mean? And how does that affect us in 2024? Well, like I said, the Deep teaches things that are completely different from most people who are prophesying out there. You have people who talk about the Nephilim, and they say, okay, the Nephilim, the sons of God, which were the angels, came down and they had relations with the daughters of men, and they produced these giants. The Bible does not support that. The Bible does not support that. And so these Nephilim, they are who we call the Maleficent Seven. We're going to be detailing who they are and what they are doing right now in 2024, because biblically, people don't die. Biblically, people don't die. So take John, for example. They went to John. They said, John, who are you? They said, some people say that you're Elijah. Are you Elijah? He said, no. Are you the prophet? I am not. They said, who are you? He said, I am the voice crying in the wilderness. But that was Elijah's job. So then Yeshua came behind him and he said, oh, this guy came in the spirit of Elijah. So people don't die when they are in Yeshua, especially when they are under a spiritual mandate. And so the Maleficent Seven, they have not died. All they do is recycle people to use. And so we're going to be talking about who the Maleficent Seven are, what they represented in the Bible, and how their influence has shaped our world in 2024, and what they're going to be doing to push us further into this thing that's coming from 2024 to 2032. So we give Yahweh praise for that. And that's going to be very exciting. I can't wait for that episode.
I love that one.
Yeah, the Maleficent Seven. Now, there are some things that I brushed through that I did not share about the Maharanis from an Indian standpoint. And maybe in a later episode, I'm going to come back and deal with that. Because here's one thing that's very interesting. Even the Indians today, they have their own Indian triumvirate.
Yeah.
And their triumvirate is the PM, who is Modi, yes, and Kamala, who is the Maharani, and then they have their own warrior. So right now is the perfect time for us to get into our section, which is in media. Oh yeah, we're going into media today again. Yeah, we're going to take media by storm. So this is our new section that we've debuted in season 4, and we're going to be talking about media. What is the Maharani doing in media? What is our Maharani candidate doing? And how is it affecting this political race in 2024? Well, we know that it's going to come down to the Republicans, Trump, if you're listening, let me tell you, if you want to stay in this race, you've got to get yourself a Maharanian candidate. Now, when Hillary dropped out last week, a lot of things happened last week.
Yeah.
A lot of things happened last week from the Maharani perspective, and we're going to talk about that in media. A lot of things happened last week, including Nikki Haley. She dropped out of the race.
She did.
We were preparing this episode for about, I want to say 12 weeks. We were working on this episode for 12 weeks. We sat down, we looked at the political landscape, and we saw these two candidates, and these two candidates represented the Maharanian candidates. Right. And so we were preparing this, and Sarah, she had uncovered a few articles, and she said, something's just not right about our sister over here. Nevertheless, for you to be considered politically in this season, you've got to get yourself a Maharanian. Why? Because politically, as I showed in the map, the candidacy moves from west to east.
Yes.
So that is where we're moving. How far east do you go? Well, it depends. Once you get to Asia, like I said, that's it. You got to come and circle right back around to Hawaii again. So maybe it's Michelle. Who knows?
Maybe it's Dwayne Johnson.
Maybe it's Dwayne Johnson. Yeah, that sounds like 2028. Yeah. Listen, we're ready. 4 years from now. So
Samoa.
That's Samoa. That's true.
right.
That's true. That's true. But the Maharanis, listen.
That's what Young Rock is all about.
That's true. His presidency. Yes. And he's talking to an Asian guy.
Asian, yeah.
Now, the Maharanis and the Maharajas, do you know that Assyria could not take them, and they wanted to. The Assyrian king, Samuramat, actually tried to cross over into Persia and India. She couldn't do it. So the Assyrians couldn't take them. Babylon couldn't take them. Medo-Persia couldn't take them. They tried. Medo-Persia tried. Greece couldn't take them. Alexander tried. He died. He wanted to take India, and he wanted to take Arabia. And both of them are like hands off because these are Muslim territories.
Right.
Muslim territories based on Isaac's brother Ishmael.
And then Hinduism is the biggest religion in India.
India actually, they merged religions. They merged Hinduism and Buddhism.
Yes.
That's how they got these collections of God. These guys went everywhere. They're like, hey, I like that God. I like this one. It was like Walmart. You pick it up. Oh, I like this one. I like that one. I like that one. And so that's what they did. And so at the end of the day, they ended up with 10 million and counting, because they may have a new one tomorrow. Well, 30 million and counting.
They said 33 million actually.
And counting, yes.
And counting.
So yeah, they may have some more. Mm-hmm. Right now in the U.S., they just built a temple, a Hindu temple in Jersey.
Yeah.
And the Hindu temple, yes, has 10,000 gods in it. It took them 12 years to build. Right here in the United States. They are building these monuments and these temples like crazy. 10,000.
Marking their territory.
Yeah, marking their territory. But I want to introduce you to the third member of the triumvirate for India, because like I said, PM Modi is number one. Mm-hmm. Okay, he is the Maharana. He would be the Brahmin, which is the priest. He's at the top.
The
and then the political power or the economic power would, of course, be a Maharanian candidate. And he called her by name in Congress. He had everybody stand up. He said, "This one we are most proud of. She is the one." And everybody clapped. Here is the third one, who is the warrior. This guy, he is explosive. His name is Jai. I can't remember his last name. They may call him. I have it in my notes, but I'm too excited. I don't want to go to my notes. So I'm just going to play this video. Check this guy out, because most people, they don't understand. They think the Indians are submissive people, and they're very passive. No, these guys, do you know that nobody could touch them until they moved the female power from east back to the west in 1553, when Queen Mary I became the British Queen in 1553. She was the first political female after the Maharanis to take the power back to the west. And when she did that, the second thing she did was she appointed her sister, who, when she died, her sister became Queen Mary I. And the first thing she did was she formed the East India Trading Company.
Was that Bloody Mary?
Yes.
Okay.
She formed the East India Trading Company, and they wanted to take the Suez Canal because they wanted to open up the territory in India and China so that they could bring their goods from the British Empire to that region, and then take the goods from that region back to the British Empire. Of course, that trip was too far to go all the way down the Atlantic and come around to the bottom of Africa. So they cut a little canal through the Mediterranean, which is the Suez Canal, and it's still the most important region to this day for trade. The Red Sea, that's where the Houthi rebels have been bombing right now in 2024.
Yeah.
So they came bearing gifts to the Indians, and they came with all their nice things in the 1600s, and the Indians said, "Oh, this is nice." And they said, "Just let us set up a port here." And the British did set up a port. And then the British said, "Okay, we're going to bring some soldiers in. They're just going to protect our goods and our investments." And before you knew it, the British convinced one of the Indian generals to turn on the commander so that the British could put him in power, and then the British would start taxing the Indians. So that's how Britain got a hold of colonizing India.
Yeah, in the Commonwealth.
Yes.
And I mentioned in my notes that Nikki Haley's grandfather, he was a part of the British colonial army.
Yeah, Nikki Haley or
Nikki.
Oh, Nikki Haley, yes,
Yes.
because I think it was granddaddy was a part of the Freedom Fighters.
Yeah, he was the Freedom
Yes.
Fighters, and he was like in the Senate.
Yeah, he was in
They
the
were called
Senate, yes.
But
Mhm.
Nikki Haley's grandfather, he
Right.
was a part of the British colonial army.
Yes.
Military, yeah.
Yes. So the British took over in India. They colonized the territory. They were the first. I mean, for 4,000 years, these people were untouchable. And all of a sudden, in the 1700s, because the British loved their tea and they wanted the tea from India, they came and they got the spices. And so that's how India eventually fell.
Fell down.
The last Maharani, she was in power in India before the queen, that was Queen Elizabeth I. She annexed them, and then in 1840s, they became an official colony of Great Britain. And then, guess what? The Indians received their independence during the same time that Israel was given the land in 1947, between 1947 and 1948. So there's a biblical connection to India and the end times that most people, they look past, but we in the deep. We don't want you to be ignorant, so we want you to look at the whole Bible.
We don't want to be ignorant.
No,
either.
and we don't want to be ignorant. So we're teaching things that are that are all the way over in left field, because that's where Yahweh usually is. Yeshua spent 6 days outside the temple, and he went in there for the Sabbath for 2 hours, and they didn't like him in there for 2 hours, and they couldn't wait for him to leave because he would go and heal people on the Sabbath, which was considered work and unlawful. Hammurabi Codes, right? Yes. There got to be some codes in there about healing on the Sabbath. But yeah, so let's go. Let's take a look at this guy, Jai, who would be considered the in the triumvirate. He'd be considered the warrior.
India and Pakistan have been accusing each other about terrorism. Could you come to the question? My question is, how long South Asia is going to see this terrorism and is disseminating from New Delhi, Kabul, and Pakistan? How long they are going to be at war? Number one.
You're asking the wrong minister when you say how long will we do this, because it is the ministers of Pakistan who will tell you how long Pakistan intends to practice terrorism.
India has extended the import of Russian oil. It is a totally opposite position of the European sanction. Will you change your attitude during the G20 presidency?
First, we need to establish the facts very clearly. The European Union, between February 24th and 17th November, has imported more fossil fuel from Russia than the next 10 countries combined. The oil import in European Union is like 6 times what India has imported. Gas is infinity times because we don't import, whereas European Union is importing 50 billion euros worth. Even coal imports from Russia by European Union, I'm not singling any particular country, is 50% more than India's import. So the remark that you made that this is the way the European Union is going and this is the way India is going, I would very respectfully suggest maybe European Union is actually doing something very much more than India is doing it.
And he told the Financial Times before the meeting that the EU should be putting sanctions on refined oil products from India using Russian oil.
I really don't see the basis for your question. Because my understanding of the council regulations is that if Russian crude is substantially transformed in a third country, then it's not treated as Russian anymore. I would urge you to look at Council Regulation 833/2001.
So you see, that's a boss right there.
Yeah.
So India has come to the main stage, the world stage, and they said, listen, about 80 years ago, we were civil servants. They had us as slaves.
Yes.
In 2024, we ain't playing that game.
No.
So you want to compare us to the European Union? Tell the truth. So they have hours and hours of this guy on YouTube just obliterating the press because he's not standing for it, and India's not standing for it. So he is the PR man for Modi, and he just last week he said,
Put sanction on it, but they're still exporting.
yeah, exactly. He said, I'm not calling any European Union. He said, you go do your research, but listen, he said, that's what you need to look into. Don't talk about India. Yeah, it's like that movie. We don't talk about Bruno. We don't talk about the European Union, right? We don't talk about the European Union. But if we're going to mention people who are going against the system, let's be honest about
Yes.
it. So him, you put him, Modi, and Kamala Harris in the same room, you got your Indian triumvirate.
All right.
And they are taking this world by storm in 2024. She is, just last year, they released her numbers. She is the most active vice president in U.S. history.
Yes.
In U.S. history. Because the House was split, and so she would have the deciding votes. And she has been doing it.
50-50.
50-50. So she's been doing it. She's been doing the job, and she's been on it. Now, what that means for us in 2024 moving forward, it means that we're going to be exposed to a lot more than just her political appetites and affiliations to India. India comes with a whole package now because they said we've been subjected before, we're not doing it again. So she said that as a little girl, she would go on walks on the beach with her granddad. And if you study paganism and pagan cultures, there's a lot that goes on by the rivers.
Yes.
You ask Pharaoh, there's a lot of worship that goes on there. So she said she was the only one who was privileged, Kamala Harris speaking, privileged to go with her grandfather on his treks with his friends. And she said he taught her everything about democracy and about Indian independence. So what that means is India is not going to be colonized again. They're not going to be bullied into suppression again. So watch how you speak to the Indians. Now, let's talk about movies. We can talk about two movies right quick.
Yeah.
So, and while you get that prepared about the movies, one more clip I want to show. And this is Biden, because in 2021, Biden had to get into it as well. Biden says, y'all think Kamala Harris is the only one with Indian connections? He said, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. And so listen to Biden.
These are not part of my prepared remarks, but when I was in Mumbai as vice president, I finished meeting with the equivalent of the Chamber of Commerce. And afterwards, the Indian press asked me, do I have any relatives in India? Yes. And I said, I'm not sure. Next morning I had a press conference going away, and the Indian press said, someone spoke up, you have 5 Bidens in India. And although we never admitted it, jokingly, that I found out that there was a Captain George Biden who was a captain in the East Indian Tea Company. That's hard for an Irishman to admit. And the end result was that he apparently stayed and married an Indian woman. And I've never been able to track it down.
आपने भारत में बाइडेन सरनेम के लोगों के सामने होकर बड़ा डिटेल में जिक्र किया। आपने मेरे साथ भी इस बात का उल्लेख किया था। तो बाद में मैंने काफ़ी कुछ कागजात खोजने की कोशिश की है। कागजात में लेकर के भी आया हूँ। हो सकता है शायद उसमें से कुछ आगे का निकल आए, शायद आपको कुछ काम आए।
Are we related?
Yes.
All right, so Biden gets his endorsement. Biden says this ain't all about Harris in 2024, Maharanian candidates, right? Biden said, I'm Indian too. He got there vicariously through the East India Trading Company. Yes. So you see how this whole thing comes, Captain Biden, it all comes full circle, man. This Bible and this world that we live in, like I said, it's cyclical. And you wonder how different people get in power and their connections. It goes deeper than just being and meeting somebody for the first time. Okay, and you say, okay, Kamala Harris and we came on the campaign together, and so in 2020 we decided to become running. Nah, this goes back generations. So, thank you, Biden. He said, are we related? And the answer is yes. Yes, you are. So now, let's talk movies.
Okay, so this movie is from Apple Studios 2023, and it's called Killers of the Flower Moon, and it's based on a true story starring Robert De Niro, Leonardo DiCaprio, Lily Gladstone, and directed by Martin Scorsese. It tells the story of a wealthy Osage woman, Molly Buckhart, played by Lily Gladstone, whose entire family was murdered by a band of white men, engaging in a scheme to inherit the Osage Indian people's oil and riches. This film depicts the murderous era in America known as the Osage Reign of Terror. During this time, a series of murders were taking place in Osage County, Oklahoma, where some 60 or more wealthy full-blood Osage persons were reported killed from 1918 to 1931. Newspapers described the increasing number of unresolved murders and deaths among young adults as the Reign of Terror. Most of these killings took place between 1921 to 1926. These tragic killings were all orchestrated and committed by all white men. Here's a look.
All right. Killers of the Flower Moon. Now, we're not going to play, you can go and you watch the movie, you can watch the trailer, but we're just going to play a very specific clip. Because as she said, these white men, they're intermarrying the Maharanis, if you will.
Yes.
So they were taken from their land, moved to the property they strike oil, and so now the white man wants it back, but the Hammurabi Code said you can't take the land back, because the land belongs to the people. So they say, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to intermarry, and then we're going to take the land after we kill off the people. So Leonardo DiCaprio, he plays a guy that has half a heart. Like, he doesn't have a full heart, but he has half of a heart. So there's a conscience in there somewhere, small, but he has a conscience in there. But he is kind of awkward. He's not really fulfilling the role that he should. And so in this scene that we're gonna show you right quick, he has to get checked. He has to get put in check. So let's take a quick look at this.
Did you make a deal with Blackie Thompson to steal your red roadster and cash insurance?
Yes, I did.
Well, I am a 32nd degree Mason. I am imbued with confidence, trust, and responsibility, among other things.
So just laughing. Yes. So they pull him into the Masonic Lodge. You see the checkered floor. They pull him into the Masonic Lodge.
You understand what he says. The 32nd degree Masonic Lodge is not your average guy, It's the man that should eat with the president. In other words, it's the man who knows who knows everybody.
Yes.
And actually, that's what it is. I remember we talked about Albert Spike.
Mm-hmm.
It's the 32nd degree Freemason Lodge. So when you measure that 32nd degree, that means
you're right there. You're the next level.
You're on a circle.
This guy, he was the most powerful person in that town. So he actually ran the town, and everybody had to filter their plans and ideas through him. But the movie, we watched it. It's like 3.5 hours of just gut-wrenching, sickening stuff. Because what's going on there is paralleling what's happening in, what's the place name? That was 26 miles away.
Tulsa,
Oklahoma.
Yes.
It's literally happening at the same time. They're running parallel. Where you have the Indians, they try to remove the Indians. Yeah, they did.
They kill the Indian while blacks being killed on that.
Exactly. So they're doing it. They're saying we're going to kill two birds with one stone, take them out at the same time. And the government in D.C. is doing absolutely nothing to help. So it's an interesting movie, and it had to be released now, at the end of 2023, moving into 2024, because they're showing you what was stripped from these people, and what they're doing in this movie, Killers of the Flower Moon, to the Osage people, is exactly what Britain did to the Maharanis in with the East India Trading Company. So these are running parallel, and they're telling you that 2024 is the year of emancipation, where these things have to stop, and you have to return the power to the original democracy, which was India. So most people say, the Greeks were the original democratic movement, or the Romans. No, everybody knows historically it was the Indians who were the original democracy. So that's that clip. And then, Disney has to jump on the bandwagon as well, because Disney is not going to be outshined by any studios. So right after 2020, 2021, Disney releases their show, which is Miss Marvel. And what is Miss Marvel about? It's about a young Indian, their family, they're not immigrants, but they're trying to preserve their Indian culture within America. So she's a teenager, and it's a coming of age story. And her parents, she discovers when, she's like 16, she discovers that she has these powers or this ability, but it's actually revealed to her. She thinks that it's because she puts on this ancient Indian bracelet, and she thinks that that's where the power comes from. And I have a shot of it I want you to see, so that you can see what the bracelet looks like. Excuse me. So this is the bracelet. And they say that these bracelets come from this region. It's a Nor bracelet. So they say that this comes from this region. And if you notice the girl's eyes, when she puts it on, her eyes turn purple. It's because they say once you put the bracelet on, then the power of the jinn is activated inside of you. And the jinn is just a fancy term for a demon. But they say that these jinn, they come from an unknown territory, so they're extraterrestrial,
right?
And they have this cabal that they're running, but they're really trying to get back to home, which is exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to get back to home, right? This whole journey is about us getting back to this Garden of Eden, which is now in the kingdom of heaven. So the story follows Kamala, and she goes through this whole idea. She lives in Jersey, where the temple is being constructed, and she also is trying to preserve that Indian culture, that Indian heritage. And they are Muslim, they're practicing Muslims, but they're also incorporating Hinduism. And her friend, who is also a teenage female, is running to be part of the Congress of the Mosque, on the board for the mosque. So it's really about female empowerment, and her name is Kamala Khan. So is that too on the nose for you? It should be. And it came out in 2021. So it's solidifying Kamala Khan's raise to power, and
she's actually, and spoiler alert, she's actually the one who goes to get the young Avengers. She's putting the team together. So she'll be the leader, like Iron Man was the leader of the Avengers. She's going to be the leader of the young Avengers.
There's a new leader. Yes. All right. So now let's take a look at Miss Marvel, and just one quick scene from Disney's Miss Marvel.
Your mother and I tried for years to have a second child. We'd almost lost all hope. And then you came. Oh, Beta, you were just so perfect. That's what Kamal means in Arabic. Perfect. But in Urdu, it's more like, what's the word? Wonder. Marvel. Kamal means marvel.
So you heard it from her father. Kamal means marvel. Now, where does marvel come from? Where does it fit into the Bible? It fits into two places. The first time we're introduced to this idea of marvels actually comes from Yahweh in Exodus, where he says that in Egypt, I will do great wonders, which are marvels. Okay, that's the first time it's used biblically, and these are the plagues of Egypt. The last time it's used is in Revelation with John. John said, I stood up and I saw everything that this beast was doing, all the power that it was given, and I marveled.
I marveled at the beast.
And the angel said, why did you marvel, John? He said, you're coming this close to being kicked out of this vision. He said, this close. He said, you one more mess up and we're going to wake you up and no more revelation for you. We're going to give it to, well, Paul was dead at the time, but Paul wanted it. Paul wanted to write the book of Revelation.
That's right. That's what Paul said. I've seen things that was unlawful for me to talk about. So in other words, say, listen, they trust in me. I'm the big guy. Say, I've seen it. I've seen Revelation.
He said, amen.
But I can't write about it.
Right. He said, amen to like 3 heavens. He said the first, second, and the third. He said, I don't even know which one I was at the last time. You know, I've been there so many times. It's like a vacation for him. He said, I'm here 1 minute, next minute I'm there. So he wanted to write Revelation, but Yeshua said in John 21 that he's going to come back and talk to John. And so Paul could not write it, but he did write a letter to the church of Laodicea that is now, well, the Ecclesia of Laodicea, that is now missing. So, and I don't want anybody to come and talk, but they found it. No, you found that, keep it. You found it, keep it. Yeah, but he did write a letter that's missing, and you could go to the Bible and research that he actually said it was supposed to be an interchange, where I think it was the letter to Thessalonica. They're supposed to give that one to Laodicea, and Laodicea is supposed to give them to that letter, and then somebody messed up. The mailman, that's called the mailman in Asia Minor, and that's where the 7 letters are written to, Asia Minor. So that's another clue that this whole thing wraps up in Asia in the end times. So those are our clips for the in media section, and we give Yahweh praise and glory for everything that He's done. Yes, and we thank Yahweh because He is awesome and He is worthy to be praised.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead. You want to say something?
I'm just saying how wonderful the Holy Spirit is.
Yes.
He's so wonderful.
Yes.
He is. Yes, He is.
Wow. Now, tonight's episode has been brought to you, of course, by the wonderful scholars who are sitting at the table. And we give Yahweh praise for these people. I thank Yahweh for your laboring in broadcasting and sharing with us the Maharanian candidate and all the information that you've shared. And tonight's episode, our technical producer for this evening is Miss Sanaa Ray. So we give Yahweh praise for Sanaa being our tech producer. Yes. She's there behind the scenes, running the camera and making sure everything is going smooth. Right. So we thank Yahweh for the beautiful Miss Sanaa Ray. We give Yahweh praise for you. Your rewards in heaven. Your reward is also in the kitchen, I believe. So when we get to the dinner time, you'll have a nice reward on the planet as well. So we give Yahweh praise for that. And we also thank Yahweh for our sound engineer for the evening, who is Mr. Aaron. Yes, our audio engineer. We thank you. Yes, he's been doing a great job. Awesome. He said he's telling us when to mute our mics and when to move it. It's too close, too far.
I'm breathing too hard on my mic.
That's right.
You're breathing too hard on my mic.
I'm actually the first name they call.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they single you out.
Move it away.
They just assume it's me.
That's right.
He assumes it's me. So.
That's right. Yes, and we also give Yahweh praise for the Empress.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Empress of the Coronarivus Embassy. She is our virtual greeter down in the comment section, making sure that everybody feels welcome and everybody feels loved and appreciated. And we thank you for inviting us into your home. We appreciate you studying with us. And we give Yahweh praise for you. Thank you very much. Yes, Yahweh be praised. Yahweh be praised. And she also has an assistant as well, who is the junior version to the senior Joe. Joe Jr., JJ we call him. He is her digital assistant, making sure that he takes care of the P's and Q's. You know, sometimes these computers, they don't act right. That's so, right. You know, you always have to have a second in command to help. You need a triumvirate to make these things work, right? This is where we are. This is the triumvirate right here. She is the Maharani, I guess.
Yes.
And you are the warrior. We already know that. So by default, I'm the PM. Yes. I'm the servant. But yeah, so we got our triumvirate right here, man. Yeah, so we give Yahweh praise for that. We give Yahweh praise for that. And we thank Yahweh for everything that He's done. And of course, these things would not be possible without our dear own Mama Gigi. She is the attending, making sure that we got the coffee and the chocolate and the waters and everything, you know. So it takes a village. It takes a village to make these things happen. And we give Yahweh praise for that.
Amen.
We give Yahweh praise for that. And so we thank Yahweh for His leading and His guidance. We thank Him for His instructions. We thank Him for His prophetic word that He has spoken to us time and time again. Yahweh is increasing our accuracy. You know, because when you're faithful to do what He has called you to do, the more faithful you are to the things that Yahweh appreciates, the more He enlarges your territory. And so Yahweh is enlarging the territory of the deep ecclesia. I want you to know that. We're very different from the church system in that the church system teaches the fivefold. That's the main difference. That's the main difference. The church system teaches the fivefold. What is the fivefold? You got the the evangelist, then you've got the pastor, then you've got the prophet, and then, no, I did that wrong. Teacher, right? And then pastor, then evangelist, then you got the prophet, then you have the apostle, and that's the fivefold. And they teach it in that order. But what the Catholic Church did about 500 years ago was they flipped things around. They took the pastoralship, which is the bishopric, and they moved that to the top of the fivefold, and they smashed everything down. Wow. So whereas that was only the second tier, they made that the top tier. Why? Because when you're outside of Yahweh, you cannot prophesy, you cannot operate in the apostolic as you should, because Yahweh is the only one who can give you visions and dreams, and the Spirit is the one that awakens. So the Catholic Church invented this idea of the fivefold system. It's a corruption of what Paul was teaching. But here in the Deep Ecclesia, we teach that there is a sevenfold system. Excuse me, and that's why we're so different, because our sevenfold system takes that fivefold and it adds the other two layers that have been missing and dormant for so long. The layer above that would be the seat of Moses, and that's one of the most important seats. In Matthew 23, Yeshua talked to the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and this is what he said. He said, you sit in Moses' seat. He said, so people who are under them, be careful to observe everything that they do and they say, but don't follow after their practices, because they do not practice what they teach. And this is the most interesting statement that he made in that. He said that they shut the door to the kingdom in men's faces. He said they don't enter.
They don't enter themselves.
And they don't allow other people to enter.
That's right.
He said, and so they will become twice the child of hell as well, their converts become twice the child of hell as they are. And that's the danger of that system. So that's what you see running parallel to the Ecclesia in 2024. These two systems. So Moses' seat is one of the most powerful seats because it sits above the apostolic, it sits above the prophetic, it sits above the pastoralship and the evangelist and the teacher. It is the seat of power and authority. It is the political seat that runs parallel to the Hammurabi Codes and the Assyrian Codes and the Maharani Codes. Yes. That's the seat of power that hears the law and understands it and then directs it to the people. Yes. And then the level above the seat of Moses would be the voice in the wilderness.
Yes.
That is the one that prepares the way for the Messiah.
Yeah.
That's the most dangerous seat because it's the seat of the servant, it's the seat of the scorned, it's the seat of the one who is disrespected, the one who is repudiated, the one who is persecuted for righteousness' sake. Yes. That's the most important seat in the kingdom because it's the servant seat. And so when John came, John said, I'm sitting in that seat as the one in the wilderness, and I'm calling out for the preparation for the way of the Messiah. So that's the seat that we sit in the deep ecclesia. We are preparing the way for Yeshua to come because he is coming.
Yes,
and there's some things that will take place on that timeline from where we are right now in 2024 until it's coming. And we got about, I would say, if Yahweh is generous, we got about 15 to 20 years. But I don't think Yahweh is in a giving mood in this season. So I think that timeline is going to be cutting short. And, we're going to be right here revealing to you every step of the way what's coming next, including the next pandemic that's on schedule. Yes. And so, not tonight, though. We're not talking about that tonight.
That's right.
But we will talk about it when we do our next political episode, because the political episode that we do at the end of 2024, which is somewhere around the fall, not sure yet, but you'll know, our next political episode, we're going to be deep in the U.S. election at that point.
Yes.
That's going to be fun. But right now, we just gave you a precursor of what's going on with the Maharanian candidates, and we want you to be prepared. We want you to be aware. We want you to understand that Yahweh is faithful and Yahweh will protect his people.
Yes,
he will continue to be faithful to you. He will continue to lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.
Amen.
If you submit to his laws.
Yes.
Amen.
If you submit to his laws. Join us for our next episode. Our next episode is going to be all about the Maleficent Seven. The Maleficent Seven. These are 7 of the most dangerous people in the Bible.
Yes.
The 7 most dangerous people in the Bible. The principalities have been named after these people. That's how powerful they are. That's how powerful this culture is that they instituted. And we're going to be discussing exactly who they are, what they represent in 2024, and how we as believers can escape and emancipate ourselves from this dangerous system. So now we're going to jump into the comment section briefly before we close this out. But as I go through the comments, is there anything that you guys would love to say to the people as we close out?
I mean, I think we said everything. We said everything. I just pray for Yahweh's preservation. And I thank him for allowing you all to come and view this information. And please share it because it's important and it makes you all the wiser. And so I will continue to pray for you that Yahweh preserves you, that you take on his law and you really commit it to your life and walk in his ways and his precepts, because this is what will bring us to him in the end, and make sure that we end up living with him in the New Jerusalem.
Amen. Amen. You, brother?
I believe that we said it all. We said it all.
We said a lot.
We said it all. But I'm gonna touch on that last one. We're all Assyrian.
Yes.
We keep talking about Mystery Babylon and Assyria. And when you get to Revelation, you're trying to find out why do we say we all Assyrian where there is no Assyrian in Revelation. Then you kind of twisting things around. But if you really go deep into it, you will find out that that's exactly what it is. It's all about Syria, nothing to do with Babylon. Because as you see, the Assyrian, though it looked like a Nebuchadnezzar took over, but it has never gone away. Never gone away. It has always been the blueprint. Matter of fact, why Assyria never gone away? The Bible itself tells us that Nimrod went to school in Assyria.
Exactly.
Well, you say, well, where you get it from? Is in the Bible. The Bible said Nimrod went to school in Assyria. You see, that's the 5th grade language that I can bring it down. In other words, he went and he got his teaching, his preparation in Assyria. So why will Assyria vanish? Assyria cannot vanish. Assyria is all about Syria. So we have just unraveled this thing, and we keep unraveling this thing before your eyes. So as you said, we way on the left. People are talking about Babylon, Mystery Babylon. They all tied together. Of course, make no mistake, they all tied up together. It's all messed up in here. But if you really look deep within, it's all about Assyria.
Assyria.
And they're not going anywhere.
That's right.
We talked about it last week. We talked about it again, and we'll continue to talk about it. And America has patterned itself after Assyria. And we say if you flip the map around, you see exactly the same map. So most people are saying, oh, the Chinese will take over, the Indian will take over. Yes, there will not be a pushover.
No.
But America is not going anywhere. Revelation says she's the second beast.
Yeah.
If she's the second beast, and the second beast will be able to turn those idols into living.
Bring fire from heaven.
And call fire from heaven for it to do it. And call itself Assyria.
Yes.
Then watch out for Mystery Assyria.
Mystery Assyria. Now, in season 4, Yahweh took an entire chapter, and we call it the love letter to Assyria. We're going to break that chapter down because it is a love letter to America. That's not going to be the next episode. Let me give you the rundown because I see BJ is asking for dates and times. So in 2 weeks, we're coming back in 2 weeks. So March 29th, what they call Good Friday. It's going to be a great Friday if you come and join the Deep Ecclesia. It's going to be a great Friday for you because we're going to be talking about the Maleficent 7. 3 weeks after that, mid-April, that's the episode where we're going to talk about the Mark of the Beast.
Yes.
We will give you all of the biblical information. This is not the Hollywood style of Mark of the Beast with the 666 on the forehead and the barcodes and the chips. Listen, the Bible does it. The Bible is much more subtle and seductive than that. This thing it's been written. It's too on the nose. It's been written and then encoded and then decoded and then re-encoded and encrypted. So we're going to unravel it and unpack it based on the Bible. We're not bringing outside sources. We're not going to Hollywood. We're not looking at the end times. We're not going to the Catholic teaching on the end times or anything like that.
Hollywood is deceptive.
The media. Yeah. Okay. So no, we're going to go to the truth and we're going to reveal what the truth of Yahweh says.
But that's what Yeshua said. Yeshua said, to you, It is given to be revealed.
That's right.
The
Yes.
secret, the hidden mystery of the
Yes.
kingdom.
Yes.
Those are the secret. Those are the hidden mystery of the kingdom.
That's it. That's it.
They are hidden. They are there, but they're hidden.
They're there, but they're hidden. So we, as the deep, it's our responsibility, right, as the very elect, to reveal these things so that you can be prepared. And we're doing it in 2024. So when this mark starts being issued subtly from 2025 moving forward, and we're not saying, okay, you take the mark, and the mark is going to be the stamp for 2025, and then you're out in the cold. No, they are going to start. It always starts by laying it out in the law. And then once they lay it out in the law, and then it becomes a matter of choice. Now you have to choose to get the mark. But the problem that the Bible says about this mark is the mark is enforced. It's caused.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
everybody's talking about, you're going to go to the bank and, you can't buy or sell if you have the mark. The Bible does say you can't buy or sell, but it's a lot more subtle than that. It's be careful what you buy and sell. That's really the way the Hebrew phrased it. Be careful what you buy and what you sell, and how you operate and how the system is manipulated. So the Maleficent 7 starts it off, because you cannot understand the mark until you understand these people. Once you understand these people, then the mark makes sense. I hope we've answered all the questions. I see one question that we didn't.
Yes, when is it? You said 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks.
You did
March,
say that.
yes, March 29th.
Yeah.
So, but he did ask, he said, you saying we should watch Kamala?
Nicholas says, stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
That's what we tell you, BJ. Stay tuned.
So just like we showed in 2020, right? We said, look, this is what Yahweh is saying, and time will tell.
That's right.
all we do is we give information. So here's how we're gonna wrap this episode up. We're gonna wrap this episode by showing that clip again from us in 2020, and that's gonna be the close of our episode. Shabbat Shalom. We appreciate all of you being here. We thank you for inviting us into your home.
Yes.
We love you. We say thanks to you, and may Yahweh continue to bless you. And may He continue to give you peace, hope, and a future. You're covered. You're covered as long as you submit to Yahweh's laws and you love Him. Blessings and shalom.
Blessings
Enjoy
and
your great
shalom.
weekend.
All right, these are facts now. You can take it. We're laughing, but this is serious. We're laughing, but this is serious. And I'm telling you. Yeah, so I'm telling you. Now, when does coronavirus end? When does coronavirus end? February 2023. That's when they're going to defeat coronavirus. You'll be dealing with that for the next 2 years.
Sure.
Okay? They're like, boy, you're so confident. How you could just throw them numbers like that? Well, time will tell.
And folks, in the midst of the COVID crisis, when schools were closed and we were shutting down everything, let's recognize how far we came in the fight against the pandemic itself. While the virus is not gone, thanks to the resilience of the American people and the ingenuity of medicine, we've broken the COVID grip on us. COVID deaths are down by 90%. We've saved millions of lives and opened up our country. We opened our country back up. And soon we'll end the public health emergency.
More than 3 years after being put into place, the COVID public health emergency at the federal level will come to an end on May 11th.
The White House made the announcement today with COVID rates declining and treatment options more available coast to coast. CBS 8's Richard Allen looks at what ending this emergency could mean for many families and why the White House made this action today.
Well, that's right. The White House says it's giving more than 3 months' notice before ending this public health emergency so that hospitals and health providers have time to prepare for a number of changes.